Everybody good? All right, let's dance. Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment regular meeting of February 21st, 2023 is now in session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Miss Shaw,
Here.
Mr. Bignell, Mr. Carley, Mr. Chabra,
Here.
Mr. Toretto,
Here.
Mr. Patel,
Here.
Mr. Barone,
Here.
Ms. Hernandez Prince,
Here.
Mr. Sadaha,
Here.
Vice Chair O'Gorman,
Here.
and Chairman Gumba.
Here. We have some minutes for consideration.
Yes, we do. January 17th, 2023, and January 24th, 2023 for approval.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a regular meeting of the Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board is composed of Edison residents appointed by the Municipal Council. We are all volunteers. Members are to be certified in land use by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. We also conduct in-house training amongst the board. Each case, the pub will have a public portion. Within the public portion, any person within 200 feet of the subject property will be able to be heard first. That is someone that has received a notice by certified mail that they're within 200 feet. We'll then go to outside of 200 feet. Each person testifying will have 6 minutes to make their statement. They are allowed to cross-examine the applicant and their witnesses. Any questioning will not count towards your 6 minutes. We ask that you ask the questions at the beginning and then begin your statement. We will ask that the hearing be conducted with respect. No booing, no applauding, no outbursts. As prior, the board will see where we are around 10:30 a.m. I'm sorry, 10:30 p.m. God, if we're here that long. 10:30 p.m. as to if we'll continue. With that, Madam Secretary, please call the first case.
Can we point out too that Mr. Ayat just walked in and is here?
Present.
Good evening, Mr. Ayat.
Okay, first one, case number Z06-2022, Sachin Patel, 4 Charles Street, to construct a 2-story addition to an existing single-story dwelling. Lot coverage proposed is 41.5%, where 40% maximum required. Minimum side yard proposed is 5 feet, where 6 feet minimum is required. Affected property is located in the RB zone, designated as block number 54603, lot number 72.01 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Good evening.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Sachin Kumar Patel.
And I see you also have someone seated to your left. Is he going to be testifying?
He's my architect, yes.
Okay. Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
And if you could pull that microphone closer, would you please state your full name for the record?
Robert Charles Onehouse.
Can you provide some qualifications, sir?
I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey. I've appeared before the board numerous times. this is actually a second submission for
Update.
Charles Street. They were approved with 3 variances.
Wait, let me accept you first.
Okay, sorry.
And your licenses are all current and in good standing?
Yes,
Okay, we'll accept you. Now you may proceed.
okay. Well,
Actually,
let Mr. Patel.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
would like to explain. So we, last year, around April, we had 3 variances approved. One was for lot coverage, one and another one was for side yard, minimum side yard setback, and the third variance was for combined side yard setbacks. So the minimum side yard setback was 5 feet, and combined side yard setback was 11 feet 8 inches. After I spoke to my surveyor who did survey on the property, I think that based on those dimensions, the original plan was 20 by 25 feet basement and 20 by 25 feet first floor. Those dimensions would reach 3 feet close to the garage that is next door. It's a masonry garage. There are no windows. It's hardly used. But since we are going 3 feet, we kind of had to re-get the, like, update the variance permissions. So then, when I was starting to, like, apply for that process, I figured rather than having a basement, I wanted to get like a first story and a second story. So we kind of updated a plan. We still first story, we reduced the size, so we're still 5 feet from the garage. But second story is what we really wanted to have like a playroom for the kids, like maybe a table tennis table, pool table, something like that. So we wanted it little bit bigger. So we added cantilever. So the second story is going to be 3 feet away from the side yard. First story is still going to be 5 feet away from the side yard. But since second story is still going closer, we wanted to update the variance for the plan. And in that dimensions, the total variance, total setback is from 11 feet 8 inches. It is now 11 feet. And side yard, minimum side yard setback from 5 feet to 3 feet.
Okay.
And we will not need a variance for the
The lot coverage,
Lot
yeah,
coverage.
because we reduced the size of the first floor to 16 by 25.
Okay. And so you were approved last year, correct?
That's correct.
What was the side yard setback at your approval?
5 feet.
5 feet? So you're going out another 2 feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone on the board have any questions? Okay. Do you have any other testimony?
I submitted a couple of pictures of the properties in my neighborhood who do have, like, I didn't really go and measure, but I can fairly confidently say that they are like 3 feet close to the property line. And the garage that I'm going close to, I'm still going second floor. The garage is 1 story, so my second story is going close to the garage, and the garage is masonry. So the first floor is still like 5 feet from that property line, not from the garage, but from the property line.
All right. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Brown, you good? Okay. All right. Seeing none, we will now go out to the public. Anyone within 200 feet of the application wishing to testify? Anyone outside 200 feet? All right. With that, I'll close the case and I'll go to the board.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
there is.
I apologize.
To approve?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes on the motion?
Ms. Hernandez Prince?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Sadaha?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Chabra?
Yes to the motion.
Vice Chair O'Gorman?
Yes.
And Chairman Kumba.
Yes on the motion. Congratulations.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
All right, next case on the agenda?
Okay, number 2 is carried from January 17th, 2022, with no renotice required. Case number Z15, 2022, American Outdoor, 740 Old Post Road. Use and bulk variances to construct and install a 100-foot billboard on the existing property. Front yard setback required is 50 feet, proposed is 10 feet. Side yard setback required is 40 feet, proposed is 15 feet. Max sign height permitted is 15 feet, proposed is 100 feet. Number of sign faces permitted is 1, proposed is 2. Max sign area permitted is 250 square feet, proposed is 672 square feet. Affected property is located in the LI zone, designated as block number 26601, lot number 29 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Good evening, Mr. Silver.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, members of the public. My name is Michael Silbert, and I'm the attorney this evening for the applicant, American Outdoors Advertising, from the law firm DeFrancesco Bateman, located in Warren Township, New Jersey. And it's good to be back before the board. I'll be filling in for Mr. Lair this evening, who's unable to join us. He's fulfilling a lifelong dream, traveling to India, but of course he sends his regards to the board. Just a preliminary question, Ms. Shaw, do we have 7 voting members this evening? It's like,
We do.
okay. To refresh the board's collective recollections, we appeared before this board on numerous occasions. First hearing on this application was on September 20th, 2022, and was preceded by 2 additional hearings on November 22nd, 2022, and January 17th, 2023. We have presented and concluded the engineering testimony of both Tiago Duarte and Joseph Sperone, the professional traffic testimony of Justin Taylor, the planning testimony of John McDonough, and the professional lighting testimony of Dr. Craig Berniker. Our professionals, with the exception of Mr. Duarte, are in attendance this evening to answer any questions of the public as it relates to their respective testimony. I'm not exactly sure from a procedural standpoint, Mr. Chairman, how you'd like to proceed, but I would respectfully ask that the applicant be granted the right to recall any of its witnesses to address any of the objector's testimony. I understand that there may be either an attorney or a planner that was retained by potentially one of the objectors this evening.
Without objection.
Great. As a reminder to the board, we are seeking preliminary and final site plan approval together with a D6 height variance where a height of 15 feet is allowed and 100 feet is sought in order to place a 2-sided V-shaped digital billboard sign along the north side of the New Jersey Turnpike on the subject property. As was just stated, the subject property is located at 740 Old Post Road, block 266.01, lot 29, and consists of 6.4 acres. The subject property is situated in the township's light industrial zone where billboard signs are a permitted use. And I would just like to stress again to the board that and the public that the proposed billboard is in a zone where this use is permitted. I say that because there were a number of questions last hearing as to why the applicant selected the subject property to locate the proposed billboard. In short, the location was selected because, of course, your ordinance permits billboards in the light industrial zone. To my knowledge, this is the only zone that permits billboards, and the zone itself is not very large. So there are only a finite number of locations within the township that permits billboards. Not to mention the state only allows the placement of outdoor advertising signs in very specific locations, this of course being one of them. And then to state the obvious, the subject property is adjacent to a 12-lane interstate highway, where this board has a clear history of approving both static and digital billboards along. As was previously testified to, the proposed height of the billboard is necessitated by the topography and grade differential to the highway, as well as the vegetation and trees that exist along the highway, which are in the range of 30 to 40 feet in height. In addition to the D6 height variance, the applicant is also seeking certain bulk variance relief. The applicant seeks 672 feet for each side of the billboard face, where 250 feet is permitted. The applicant seeks a front yard setback of 10 feet from the property line facing the turnpike, where 50 feet is permitted, and the applicant proposes that the billboard be located 15 feet in the side yard setback, where 40 feet is permitted. As previously stated, the sign will be two-sided as opposed to your ordinance, which only allows one side. There are several one-story buildings that currently occupy the property. The applicant will be a ground tenant located on a small portion of the northeasterly section of the property. As this board likely recalls at the November 22nd hearing, the board asked that we prepare a revised billboard exhibit with the proposed billboard superimposed on drone shots from various vantage points of the nearby residential properties, and this exhibit was marked as Exhibit A5, and it was submitted to the board and presented at the last hearing on January 17th. It was the professional testimony of the applicant's expert witnesses that the proposed billboard would be substantially filtered, if not completely obscured, by the vegetation and buffering between the residential properties and the proposed billboard. And due to the distance and angle between the proposed billboard and the nearest residential properties, that the proposed billboard would not result in any substantial detriment to the nearby residential property owners. More specifically, that there would not be any substantial visual impacts to the nearby residential properties. Dr. Berneker concluded that there would be no appreciable contribution of light, glare, luminance to any of the nearby residential properties. He specifically noted that there are other existing light sources that are in the field of view of those residential properties located closest to the proposed billboard, and that those existing light sources would be far brighter and have a far greater impact to those properties than the impact, if any, of the proposed billboard. To address the board's concerns about flashing images, Dr. Berneker testified that there would not be flashing images in any way as a result of the proposed billboard, that each message is static for a full 8 seconds, with Dr. Berneker testifying that the light emitted from the billboard as a result of the message changing would not be an issue to the nearby residential properties based upon his analysis, the report that he submitted to the board, and his professional experience. He further testified that most of the residential properties nearby would not even see the proposed billboard sign faces. And for those small number of residences that do view the billboard sign faces, that their respective line of sight would be highly limited due to the existing vegetation, trees, and the angle and distance between their respective properties to the proposed billboard. I think it's important that we correctly consider this application. The operative word here is not visibility, but whether the proposed sign itself could have a substantially negative visual impact. So if one were to look out their window, if a member on the board or a member of the public were to look out their window at home, they would see many, many things, but visibility alone is not at play here. So just because you see an object or a small speck of light in the distance does not in itself constitute a negative visual impact, as was testified to by Mr. McDonough. Or more importantly, it does not constitute a substantially negative visual impact. And before I turn things back over, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to remind the board that this board is no stranger to digital billboards. This board approved a double-sided digital billboard at the Heller Industrial Site just over a mile away. The Heller digital billboard is similar to the proposed billboard before this board this evening. The Heller digital sign stands at 100 feet in height, and this board approved the Heller digital billboard with an 8-second flip. Of course, while every case stands on its own, the board should note that the applicant is proposing a very similar billboard. This board approved the Heller Industrial Site digital billboard with technology that is now approximately 10 years old. So we're now asking the board to approve the same type of sign as the Heller digital billboard, but we note that this billboard will be equipped with the latest modern day digital technology. And with that as an introduction, I can turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again.
So your case is closed, you're ready to go to the public?
Yes.
Okay, all right, anyone within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? I believe there's a planner, okay. So we'll turn over to you first. So you'll do your introduction, and then also if you could identify which residents that you are representing.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Peter G. Steck, S-T-E-C-K, 80 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey.
And Mr. Steck, if you could provide some qualifications for the board?
Yes. By way of education, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Marquette University and a master's in city and regional planning. I was licensed as a planner in New Jersey in 1976 and still hold that license. In terms of experience, I worked as an associate with 2 consulting firms, Malcolm Kassler Associates and Alvin Gershon Associates. I was the planning director for the Township of Montclair for just short of 10 years. And for the past 20 some odd years, I've practiced as a professional planning consultant on behalf of some municipalities, some developers, and some neighborhood groups. And my license is still in effect.
Thank you very much. We'll accept your qualifications.
Thank
You
you.
may proceed. If you could
I'm
also-
representing Sandra Loeffler at, I think, 54 Manning, I think is the address. I have one client.
Okay, and if, Ms. Loeffler, if you could just identify yourself if you're here? Okay, thank you. So just so you know that since you have a planner, your professional will speak for you? Okay, just want to make sure you understood that before you proceed. You may proceed, thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I was advised that Mr. McDonough is in the parking lot. So if there are any questions for Mr. McDonough, I would ask, if possible, if you could wait a minute to ask.
Why don't I pass out an exhibit
Okay.
while he's walking in?
Great, thank you.
He's glad-handed in the lobby there. He's got to hurry up.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
No, yeah, I already got it. 1,000 of them. I won't cough again.
Mr. Steck, we're going to mark this exhibit as Objector 101.
Okay. If there's an extra one, perhaps I would have one.
You want everything?
A whole bunch of extra ones.
Okay.
Oh, 01. 01. For anyone who wants to mark this, this is 01. O as in office 1.
Oh, yeah. You need another one? Yes. Could someone release theirs? All right, thank you. Let me just, I'm going to briefly describe what O1 is, and then I'll refer to it in my testimony.
Mr. Steck, if you just get a little closer to the microphone, please.
Oh, thank you. O1 was prepared by me, it's dated February 21 of this year, and it consists of 7 pages. And on the upper right-hand side is P1 through P7. The first page is a 2020 satellite photo from NJDEP, where I've shown the location of the 2 billboards, some linear dimensions, as well as some pictures of residential uses that are in the area. On the upper left-hand corner is a view. Now, my client's house is on the left-hand side. There's like a 1.5-story house. And when she looks to the northeast, and the leaves are off the trees, the view she has is in the upper left-hand corner there. There are also apartments by Avenue C, and the picture on the right-hand side, the tallest, the one toward the middle of the page, is what the view is there. The second page has the same 2020 aerial photograph, but I identify where the variable message panels are that are on the New Jersey Turnpike, as well on the lower right-hand side, billboards that are permitted by the New Jersey Department of Transportation. The next page, P3, is a view looking down Grace toward the site of where the proposed billboard is. And I'll talk about this in a minute. There are a lot of numbers flying around. The public notice says that this is a 100-foot tall billboard. Some of the plans by Dynamic show 95 feet. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I also, on the right-hand side, showed pictures from on the highway. As you may know, that shoulder and lane closest to the site is now blocked off because they're working on the bridge. And so I went up there and took some photos to show the nature of the vegetation that's there. The next page, P4, actually it's a reproduction of the early one. We can pass that one quickly. P5 is showing the spread, and we'll talk about the degrees from the center about where the spread or the readability of the billboard is. And page P5 is, again, to the southwest, and P6 is the reverse to the northeast. And finally, P7 on the left-hand side has a photo of the Heller Park billboard, where I'm standing right at the bottom, maybe about 60 feet away. And the other pictures are digital billboards on Route 3, where I tried to get as close to them as possible to show that when you're at the edge of, let's say, the 70 degrees or however many degrees it is, you still see the light. You may not always read all the words, but it still projects light. So let me go back to the beginning and lay some foundation here. In preparation, I've been to the site at least 3 times. I was at 2 of the earlier hearings. I read the transcript from the January meeting. I was here when Mr. McDonough first testified, and I read the transcript of his supplemental testimony at the last meeting. I also viewed the exhibits prepared by the applicant and the plans. I'm sure you're familiar with the subject property. It's fairly substantial, 6.4 acres. Its address is on Old Post Road, but you really access the self-storage facility by going down Grace Street, which is really an easement rather than a public street. And as you know, there's extensive frontage along the New Jersey Turnpike, and the applicant has indicated that from the base of the sign that's being proposed, the road bed is about 25 feet higher. And the road does kind of crest where that the bridge is that's being reconstructed at the moment. The site is already developed, and it appears to have excessive coverage in terms of the ordinance, and it has trucks that are parked in the area where this sign is to go. So as kind of a side issue, the applicant is modifying a site plan for this property. And while the applicant is saying, I'm just the tenant, the answer is there are changes to a property that's already developed, which triggers a site plan to that property. So one of the issues is The trucks that are parked there, where are they going to go when they get to be relocated? We tried to get a hold of the site plan for the self-storage facility through an Oprah request and without a response. But it would seem to me that part of this application is an amendment to presumably an existing site plan where presumably there was a variance granted for impervious coverage. And if you've been on the site, you'll see that this area has gravel and maybe tailings on it, but it's a little bit of the Wild West in this corner of the property. This proposal is to, and I want to say that the documents that both the applicant has presented and I have presented in terms of distances, that goes from the pole, the 81-foot tall pole that's being proposed, at least 81 feet on one of the plans. But if you wanted to measure to the sign, if you were going to the south, the sign's actually closer because the pole is at one end of these 14-foot tall panels, but the signs project closer than the pole. So on one set of plans, the monopole height is 81 feet, and the signs are, I guess, 14 by 46 feet. That would total 95 feet. The public notice says the applicant is proposing 100-foot tall. So one of the things, and I'm going to say this several times, is there's an imprecision to the testimony that is troublesome and I think also hurts its credibility. As you know, the applicant is proposing 2 billboards. There's a V shape, and they're digital, but not static. The answer is the applicant is proposing that they'll change every 8 seconds. And this is going to be 24/7. In the middle of the night, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., this billboard will be active, meaning every 8 seconds it will change. I did go as part of my work to, as you saw from the pictures, the Heller Park billboard, which is a digital billboard. And it's touted as having approximately the same height as what is being proposed here. One of the inconsistencies, and I'll talk more about this later, is what is the spread of light and how far can you see this? One of the witnesses from the engineering firm at the Durham billboard site said, oh, you can see this from 1,250 feet away. And then there's testimony tonight that its visibility is less than that. There's discussion about where this cone of vision is. And keep in mind that this cone of vision, which is 70 degrees on each side of neutral, meaning a total of 140 degrees, the applicant is saying that's the area where you can read what's on the board. The applicant's expert on lighting referred to this Watchfire document that had a 30-degree cone, and it had what it looks like a different technology. They talked about having these LED lights, but then that article talked about baffles around them so that when you're past a certain point, the light, you can't directly see the bulb, it's blocked. My understanding is the applicant, if they're doing what's being done the same as on the Heller site, there aren't baffles on that site. That's a digital site, but it's not the same thing where after a certain point the lights disappear. You can always see light being projected from that board. While this is clearly designed for highway viewing, and the applicant says you travel some 600 or 700 feet, and then that's 8 seconds and then the image changes. So the testimony is the driver is only going to see maybe one change as they're passing the site. But that's probably very true, except that's not true for the homeowner. The homeowner sitting in the backyard is going to see this change every 8 seconds. They're not moving on. Someone who's driving, especially at night, they see there's a lot of movement of lights. Cars are moving, people maybe put their brake lights on, but a homeowner has a different view of this. The answer is they're going to see every change. And when it goes from one ad to another, the one ad might have a black background, one ad might have a red background, there is a flashing effect. Now, it's not strobing, but this does change every 8 seconds, and it emits different levels of light as that changes. And the whole idea is, well, from a safety point of view, they're doing every 8 seconds on the highway. But as you know, flashes like that are attention-getting. Why do police cars have flashing lights? They want to draw your attention. Why do tall towers near an airport have flashing red lights? They want to draw your attention. So the point that I'm saying is that there is a different reaction from a homeowner to a digital billboard that's changing than someone who happens to be driving in a car on the highway. Part of my analysis was to look at the surrounding area, and I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it. It's pretty developed. If you look on the second page of of 01, which is P2 in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see kind of the pattern of development. This is one of the 2 smallest light industrial zones along the New Jersey Turnpike. If you go to the southwest, there is a much larger light industrial zone. And except for one small office area, this zone is surrounded by residential zoning. As you see on the second page, P2 of 01, there are variable message boards both to the northeast and to the southwest, which means that if someone is saying, well, these digital billboards are great because they have, Amber Alerts, you can do emergency stuff. Well, what is unusual here is that we have 2 mechanisms already owned by the state of New Jersey that do those emergency notices. I don't know any other highway that has that kind of activity. And again, one is going in one direction and one is going in the other direction, but they're fairly proximate to it. As you see in the lower right-hand side, and this is important because of the way your ordinance looks at things, there are 2 NJDOT licensed billboards that are in the area on Woodridge Avenue. There's a billboard, I think it's 12 square feet for the pharmacy, and Edison Lockup, which is the use of the subject property, has a 28 square foot billboard also on the adjacent property. So those are technically billboards. They happen to be referenced in NJDOT documents. And actually the corner of Grace Street and Old Post Road is also licensed for a 3rd billboard. It was supposed to be a triangular billboard, and now they're just small signs there. But these are all technically billboards. They refer to a use that's not on the subject property. So here we have an area that's fairly built up. The turnpike, by the way, is, as you know, very wide, 6 lanes plus a shoulder going to the northeast. That's a wide swath of land, a lot of vehicles that can see this billboard. Part of my analysis was to look at your master plan and reexamination report. Your master plan, last comprehensive one, was 2003. The re-exam was 2011. In the master plan, the word billboard doesn't pier. Yes, this area was recommended for light industrial use, but there's no formal policy expressed in the master plan on billboards. So this is in an LI zone, and the applicant is telling you time and time again, this is a permitted use. This is a permitted use. Let's go on. It's not a permitted use by right. First of all, Section 37-33.1 has a list of permitted uses in the LI zone. And billboards is not one of them. If you look at the Section 37-62.11 B3, it does say that in the LI zone, freestanding signs or billboards are permitted, but while this is not formally labeled as with the following conditions, they are essentially conditions. This is not a use that's listed as a permitted use in the zone. It happens to be a list that has dimensional standards, which is identical to an ordinance that talks about conditional uses. In fact, the applicant's public notice said this was a conditional use. And the applicant violates a number of the conditions. Let me go into some detail here. Before I do, I want to go to a more fundamental issue. And that is the definitions in your ordinance. The applicant said, everyone knows what a digital billboard is, and you've handled it before. But you have a definition in your ordinance of a flashing sign. And it means a sign, the illumination of which is not kept constant in intensity at all times when in use. So in 37-61.7, according to your ordinance, this is a flashing sign. Your ordinance also says, that's in the definition section, this is a flashing sign. And in section 37-61.7, talks about prohibitions. Searchlights or flashing or animated signs are prohibited, other than for a period of 7 days from the start of the opening of a new establishment. So I suppose you could put the sign up for 7 days and then it becomes illegal because it's a flashing sign in terms of your ordinance. In section 37-62.6, it says, no sign shall have flashing lights or exposed high intensity illumination or exposed neon tubes or reflective material. So my first observation is this is not a that's not a permitted sign. It is a prohibited sign in all zones in the municipality. In the light industrial zone, it is treated as a conditional use. And one of the conditions, which is, I guess, a classic one for conditional uses, is that you have to be at least 2,500 feet from another billboard. Now, on page P2 of my Exhibit 01, there are 2 NJDOT recognized billboard signs that are less than 2,500 feet from the proposed sign. So, number one, we need a D1 variance because this is a flashing sign and flashing signs are not permitted in any zone. Number two, a billboard is, now again, the billboard regulations don't say whether it changes or not. Your billboard regulations don't make a distinction between digital or static ones. But a billboard is permitted in the LI zone, and I would suggest, according to the ordinance, a non-flashing billboard. But even if it's a non-flashing billboard, you're not supposed to have it within 2,500 feet of another billboard. And there are at least 2 billboards that are up today that are within that dimension. So they need a D1 use variance, and they need a D3 conditional use variance. They also need a D6 height variance. And for the applicant to say that this is a permitted use in the zone, I think is a misinterpretation of the ordinance. So what relief does the applicant want? The applicant, the maximum height is 15 feet. The applicant wants to go, in the public notice, 100 feet. In one of the profile plans, the applicant said 95 feet. And oddly enough, in the permit from NJDOT, there was a letter of approval, July 16th, 2019, where the applicant said that the sign face was going to be 14 by 48 feet, and the height of the support structure 70 feet. So 14 plus 70 is 84 feet. And height's important because your ordinance wants a lower sign, and the applicant is saying, well, I need to get above the trees. Well, the applicant
Just a sec,
applied.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you just get a little closer to the microphone,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, if folks at home listen to you.
I was drifting, sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all
Okay.
good. I give you credit for standing up there.
So here's the applicant seeking a permit from NJDOT for an 84-foot sign to the top. Here's the applicant wanting 95 feet to the top of the sign in one section and 100 feet in the other. And why this is important, if you'll go to P3, the third page of my Exhibit 01, I tried graphically to show how high this site is going to be. Now, in that photograph, there are trees on the upslope. So keep in mind that, so those numbers of 65 and 90 are from the applicant's engineering plans. That's elevation above sea level. So the base of the sign is 65 feet. And the applicant says the surface of the road is 25 feet up, and they have a topo map that's at the highest point about 90 feet. So those first 2 yellow lines are 25 feet. The trees, so you don't misinterpret this, there are trees on the downslope from the highway that are not up on the flat section. That's the public highway. There's no trees there. But when the applicant says the trees are 35 to 40 feet tall, those trees are on the downslope. So that's not the height above the pavement that those trees are. And so I roughly estimated here. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is there are trees that seem to be taller. They're on the other side of the highway. So they're kind of condensed on the photo on the left-hand side. But I approximated what a 81-foot tall pole would look like, plus a 14-foot tall sign. And there's a lot of distance between the trees and the bottom of the sign. The applicant is justifying the height of the sign, saying, I got to be above the trees. And then not an expert witness, but a representative from outdoors say, well, when you're looking up at an angle, you got to look over the trees. You don't look horizontally at the sign. Well, keep in mind, there are 6 lanes approaching this. And in my opinion, 90% of the traffic is not looking over trees. If you're going to start viewing this 1,000 feet away, you're not looking over trees. You're looking to your right because you got a shoulder and then 6 lanes, and that's only in one direction. So trees are not, you're not looking over trees to look at this billboard. It's very high, and no one quite knows, it's not on the record, how high this billboard is going to be above what the trees are. If you want to get a sense of the trees, that's the right-hand side on P3. So these are all, except for maybe one, they're all deciduous. Give you a sample of height on the photograph on the lower right that I took on February 19th. There's a truck there. Now, the truck is probably, at most 12 feet high. You got to be under 14 feet to get on the highway and get under the bridges. So those trees are, first of all, very light. They're deciduous, and they're no 30 to 40 feet tall over the pavement. And I would invite you to think about this, because this billboard, the applicant, in my opinion, has to try to comply with the law, and there is no, I think, basis to say that you need this height in order to get over the trees. Moving on. So, again, in short form, the variances that are needed are D6 height, in my opinion, a D1 use variance, it's a flashing sign by your ordinance, and a D3 because this is closer than 2,500 feet from at least two other billboards. There are issues of the size of the sign, 250 square foot maximum. Applicant is proposing 672 square feet, only permitted to have one face. The applicant has two faces, and in fact, they're split in a V shape. So the applicant is proposing two signs where only one was introduced by your ordinance. And not a conditional use requirement, but the pole is not set back where it's supposed to be from the side and the rear property lines. So there are a lot more variances that are needed, and this is clearly not a use that is permitted by right on this property. Now, the applicant, you've all heard the testimony, and I'm going to just summarize what I heard. First of all, the applicant's lighting expert referred to this watch fire study. And if you carefully read the study, it's talking about lights that have a 30-degree cone, that have baffles or louvers on them. My understanding is that's not the level of technology that the applicant is proposing. The applicant is proposing what the billboard, digital billboard, is similar to what's on the Heller Park. And on the Heller Park, you can walk right up to the bottom of the billboard and you still see the lights. The one billboard I've seen that has this, I think this technology, is if you're going into the Lincoln Tunnel, there is a billboard on the right-hand side that when you go past a certain point, the lights magically disappear. And I suspect that's the new technology, where you have baffles on the side of each bulb, like an octagon, which really physically blocks the light. The applicant has not told us the technology that's being proposed, but if the applicant says it's going to be the same as at Heller Park, in my opinion, that's different from what their lighting expert talked about. Mr. McDonough, a good friend of mine, planner, cited several purposes in the municipal land use law that he thought were advanced. He said purpose A promoted public welfare, and he said that because it was a permitted use. Well, that's, in my opinion, not a public purpose that advances some of the variances that are needed. That means that every use that's permitted in the zone, like a bottling plant, promotes the public welfare. That's not what I think the municipal land use law is looking at when you're looking for, let's say, potentially a public purpose or special reason. Mr. McDonough cited purpose G, talks about providing sufficient space in an appropriate location. I'll grant you that it's a good location to catch motorists, but I don't think it's a good location because of the houses in the area, and there's no sufficient space. The applicant has to get setback standards. He can't meet what the standard is in the ordinance to put the pole on the property, and this is a 6.4 acre property, and they still can't meet the setback standards. And again, as I mentioned before, this is a modification to an existing facility that presumably got site plan approval. And where are those trucks going to go? Are they going to go in another location? This requires not only a site plan for this tenant, it requires a modification of the site plan for this facility. Mr. McDonough said it promotes the free flow of traffic, and I presume what he meant by that is that there are not people driving to this site just because there's a billboard. That, in my opinion, is a weak public purpose. Everyone knows a sign, 16 signs on the property would not generate traffic if they're billboard signs. That's unrelated, in my opinion, to the negatives that come out. He said that this promoted a desirable visual environment. In my opinion, it does not. Billboards are regulated. Why? Too many in the same location can be dangerous in terms of a motorist's eyes. Your ordinance says that a billboard that flashes is discouraged. That's your ordinance. Your ordinance calls this a flashing sign that's not permitted in any zone. And then Mr. McDonough said that this was an efficient use of land because we're going to have 2 billboards instead of 1 on the same pole. Why not 6 billboards? The answer is that, in my opinion, there is already reasonable use of this property. It already has excessive impervious coverage. The applicant is adding something else, and in my opinion, it is not efficient to now relocate trucks that are putting there without examining the larger site plan. So the applicant bears the burden of proof, and if their testimony is not believable, is inconsistent, that on itself, in my opinion, gives this board the ability to deny this application. We still don't know how tall this is going to be. Is this 95 or is it 100? The applicant says we need it to look over the trees, but there's no engineering study that shows that that's the case. There's nothing in front of you that says where the bottom of the sign is versus where the trees are. And again, this is not a narrow corridor to look at this. This is 6 lanes of turnpike in one direction with a shoulder on the side. That's a lot of area to look at this billboard. And because there's a height variance, the applicant has to try to comply as best as possible. The applicant applies to NJDOT for a permit for 84 feet. Then why go to 100? What's the basis here? And there's no basis for this height, in my opinion. I think that there was a light study done, and I'll grant you, I can't contest the fact that if you held up a book and you were 800 feet away, your book wouldn't glow from the light of this. But the issue, in my mind, is the changing nature of it. Were the applicant to have a static billboard, whether it is digital or non-digital, that doesn't draw your attention. But when you're a neighbor sitting in your backyard or looking out your window, when this is the tallest thing on the horizon, because all the buildings in the self-storage facility there's a couple 2-story buildings, but they're basically low 1-story buildings. There's a warehouse next door, 1-story. This is going to be the tallest thing on the horizon. and it's going to have the effect of flashing. And while that might not bother the motorist, in my opinion, it is going to bother a resident. And your ordinance says that. Your ordinance doesn't want flashing signs, and this is technically a flashing sign. So the applicant bears the burden of proof. The applicant has told you this is a permitted use by right. It isn't. In my opinion, there's a D1 variance, a D3 variance for not complying with the conditional use standards, and the applicant did try to address the D6 height variance, but nothing on the D1 or the D3. Without any credible evidence to justify the variances, in my opinion, this board has no choice but to turn down the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steck. Mr. Silbert?
So if it's okay, I have a couple questions, and then I'd like to recall some of my witnesses to address some of
So we're going to, you can question Mr. Steck, and then we'll go to the board to question Mr. Steck, and then you can then recall your witnesses, okay?
Mr. Steck, you referenced a master plan in 2003, and then you also referenced the reexamination of the master plan. What year of that reexamination report are you referencing?
I think it was a 2011.
Okay. So, Ms. Shaw, I know that we have a disagreement about this. I'd have to do this to put it on the record, but the applicant's contention is that the master plan has not been reexamined within 10 years. And as you're aware, Mr. Steck, pursuant to MLUL section 89, the ordinance would be presumed to be invalid because the master plan has not been reexamined since 2011. I know Ms. Shaw disagrees with me. I'm not saying this to be confrontational. I'm just doing what I have to do to represent my client. And I do have a supplement that I can distribute to the board as to the basis as to my statement. Why am I saying that?
Mr. Silber, if you would. Mr. Bignell.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Absolutely, thank you.
The planning board voted on the reexamination in December of 2021. They did it at the end of the year, but it definitely was reexamined. I believe the resolution of compliance or the resolution that followed that up was in February of 2022. But I disagree wholeheartedly that it wasn't examined within the 10 years. And that was made part of the case with the last billboard, and I think the judge was in error, my humble opinion. And like I said, I know that on the record that it was voted on in December because I had noticed that it hadn't been done and it hadn't been acted on by the administration. So I took it upon myself to put it before the board. So I know it was done in a timely fashion.
So
Thank you, Mr. Bignell.
With all due respect, Mr. Bignell, that I put in an Oprah request, which I'd like to submit to the board. I would like to submit to the board what I received back from the Oprah request, the basis for my statement. So if that's okay, I'd like to submit this.
Madam Chair, just to follow up, Mr. Chair, just to follow up, as you know, I've been the director of the planning and development since July of last year. Before then, the board was not doing its minutes in a timely fashion. So it was very difficult to respond to that Oprah request. But I do believe it's on television, so I know that that's been, we have that, so we can certainly pass that along.
Mr. Silber, I have no objection to you presenting the information, but as Mr. Bignell just pointed out, that is inaccurate for a variety of reasons. So you can submit it, but just because you requested it, we understand, but just this is to correct the record, and as you know, it was re-examined. So you're welcome to pass it out. What exhibit is this?
So this exhibit, I think, would be marked as either A7 or A8. It consists of the Oprah request for the reexamination report. The reason why I'm saying that it wasn't reexamined is because I received a preliminary report and the resolution adopting the preliminary report and nothing further. So that's the basis for why I'm saying it wasn't reexamined. I understand that Mr. Bignell obviously attends planning board meetings and would have firsthand knowledge, but I have to go off of what I received from the township. Nothing's posted, and I understand what you're saying. It's posted in a YouTube link perhaps, but when I go through the website, there's nothing posted there. I'm just doing this to preserve the record, and that I have to.
That's fine, but just so the record reflects that that is inaccurate, and we've been apprised that it is in fact inaccurate.
And I thought that was framed as me as a question, and I just wanted to respond that when the municipal land use law says that the failure to adopt a reexamination within the 10-year cycle, it's a rebuttable presumption that the municipality could, for example, demonstrate that there haven't been substantial changes in the area, and the court, for example, would reattach the presumption of validity. So it's not a slam dunk argument, and it may be, again, as of this evening, factually wrong that a re-examination report had not been adopted by the planning board.
Just so the record is clear, what was just handed up as the Oprah request is marked as A8.
And along with the Oprah request, I don't know if you need to mark it as separate exhibits. There's the preliminary report that was given to me in response to the Oprah request, as well as the resolution adopting this preliminary draft report, and also the agenda for the December 13th planning board meeting in which this preliminary report was, I assume, adopted.
I'm not marking them separately. It was handed as a packet. We'll keep it as A8. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Steck, you referenced the watch fire report. Just want to make sure you did have the opportunity to review Dr. Berneker's report.
Yes.
And is it your position that the billboard flip time, the message changing, is comparable to a police light or a strobe light? Or are you saying it's not comparable to that?
It's not comparable, but it, under the ordinance, is defined as a flashing sign.
And would you mind reading that again?
Means a sign the illumination of which is not kept constant in intensity at all times when in use.
Thank you. As you spoke to the setbacks, would you agree that it would make the most sense to locate a billboard closest to the highway if it's a billboard of this nature? Do you think it would make sense to put it closest to the highway?
If I was a billboard company, yes.
In terms of the effectiveness of the billboard, do you think it makes sense?
If I was a billboard provider, I would want my billboard to be effective. So if I could put it in the middle of the highway, I would do that.
The reason why I'm asking the question is because do you think that it would make, I'm asking the question as to the ordinance. Does the ordinance make sense that a billboard would be located far away from the highway?
The billboard, the standards seek a balance of both someone wanting to advertise through a billboard as well as protecting surrounding properties. So you can't look at one factor. From the billboard company's point of view, they would want the tallest possible, the largest possible, the closest to the highway possible.
Wouldn't it be true that if the applicant complied with the setback requirements, the billboard would be located closer to certain residential properties?
That would be true, but the applicant is claiming that there's sufficient space for this billboard, and the answer is they have to move trucks that are on this property where the billboard is supposed to go. Where are those trucks going to go?
What type of impact to impervious coverage would you expect with a billboard?
Would you ask that again, please?
Sure. So if the billboard's mounted into the ground, and we can have further engineering testimony as to how exactly it's mounted into the ground, but what type of impact to impervious coverage would you say a billboard would have? Would you say it would be de minimis to impervious coverage?
Well, it would be very small, obviously, but no one seems to find the site plan, and where that part of where the billboard is proposed and where trucks are located, there doesn't seem to be formal paving. So my concern is that the impervious coverage that was measured may be what's out there today, but it may not have been originally approved. That might have been supposed to be a green space, and we don't know that because no one seems to have a copy of that site plan.
In your testimony, you referenced possible D1 variance relief and D3 variance relief, in addition to the D6 variance relief the applicant is seeking. Did you, by chance, review the Bignell report? I want to make sure I have the date here. Just give me 1 second.
I don't have it in front of me, but I did review it as part
Okay.
of the record.
It was dated September 8th, 2022, and the report doesn't identify the variances that you're identifying here this evening.
Yes, I disagree. I read the ordinance carefully, and I believe that the variances I cited are needed by the applicant.
And are you aware during the first hearing that the applicant did make note of the fact that it noticed for D3 variance relief? However, it was identified in the report that this was a permitted use, not a conditional use.
Well, I did my own study, and the public notice does call out a conditional use, but there is no evidence from the applicant about other billboards in the area, particularly billboards that are less than 2,500 square feet from this location.
Okay. The billboards you referenced nearby, I think you said they're within 2,500 feet, and you had pictures of it. I don't have your. I gave your handout to the my team. Do you have something with you from the NJDOT that recognizes these billboards? I know that you said out loud.
There's another witness that will reference that. Ron Leffler will do it. Thank you.
Okay.
But they did a search of other billboard locations, and I put two of them on my exhibit P3. So they're recognized billboards, at least by NJDOT. And there was one approved for the corner of Grace and Old Post Road. It was supposed to be a triangular one. It seems to have been changed. There's some small signs there, but again, they're signs referencing the self-storage facility. They're not on the self-storage facility's property, so they're billboards.
Okay.
Why don't you testify to it? Yeah. I think we'll have numbers, DOT numbers for you from another witness.
Okay. And going back to the ordinance, static billboards, they have lights as well, right?
They have, pardon?
Static billboards.
Yes, they have lights, but
they also have lights.
they don't change in intensity.
Do they, are they on throughout the entire day?
Well, usually if they're lit, they're not on during the daytime. They're only there for the evening.
So the lighting of even of a static billboard, you would say, and I understand that it's different than a changing message, but you would say that a static billboard does have a time in which it's lit and a time in which it's not lit.
That's correct.
Okay. And you obviously spoke about the Heller Industrial Digital Billboard sign, so you're aware of it. Your concern was basically to the technology that we're utilizing, whether it's louvers, I think you used the word baffles.
I think the description in the Watchfire report talked about, I think it was louvers or baffles are the words that they used, that would be like octagons that would shield the individual light fixtures.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions. I would just obviously like the opportunity to bring up some of my experts to address some of the testimony that we heard.
Okay, without objection. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Steck?
I do, Mike.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm sitting here listening to Mr. Steck and Mr. Silbert. You're sitting in this evening. I'm picking up from previous testimony. And many of the points you just brought up were exactly the points that were coming to mind when Mr. Steck was giving his testimony. Basically, he's discounting and questioning a lot of the application in many ways. The baffles is a thing that sounds great. I'd like to know more about that and the technology that is surrounded around the Long Island Expressway, I think you said, something like that?
It's Route 3 going into the Lincoln Tunnel.
To me, that sounds like something I would like to know more about, you know. The fact that Mr. Steck is claiming that your application violates permitted use, goes to the core of really the application, and I'd like to have more understanding on that, Mr. Chair, because it's direct contrast to what we've heard from the applicant and what Mr. Stack is contesting. The thing about 2,500 square feet, 2,500 feet, excuse me, no other billboard, that sounded also interesting. I'd like to know more about what billboards are within 2,500 feet if you're claiming that it's not permitted. The height, I heard 84, I heard 95, I heard 100 several times. A little confusing. So my point, Mr. Chair, is that I think there's a lot of discrepancies that I just pointed out a few that are worthy of clarification.
Mr. Brown, do you have a question for the witness?
A question for the
You have a
witness.
question for the witness. It's question time, not commentary time.
I understand. Mr. Steck, my question to you then would be, these are pretty formidable claims that you made, and I have to question your claims. That would be my question. In other words, that's my question.
Yes. I think your questions are very valid. And again, the applicant is rested. They've presented you what they believe are the proofs to justify their case. And in my opinion, they're inadequate proofs. And they haven't made a distinction between, again, a resident that watches a billboard change every 8 seconds. And again, if you watch these a while, you'll see that there might be an ad that has a black background, maybe there's a Rutgers red background. There is a dramatic change, and while it's a safety issue with the driver, not more than once every 8 seconds, it's an attention-gathering device. And that's why, in my opinion, the municipality considers this a flashing sign, and while it's more offensive to someone not in a car that's in their backyard. And I think the fact that the applicant has not done a thorough evaluation of the ordinance and has, in my opinion, proffered conflicting information, that gives the board ability to deny this application because it's the applicant's burden of proof.
Mr. Brown, do you have any other questions?
I think what I'm hearing again is the discrepancies between the applicant and the opposition. For me, those were my questions.
Okay.
So I rest my case.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may very quickly, Mr. Steck, isn't it fair to say that this board has never treated a digital billboard like this as a flashing sign? I understand that's your position, but the board's history, to your knowledge.
I don't know whether they have or not. All I can tell you is I read the definition, and in my opinion, in common language, this is a flashing sign.
Okay, but you're not aware of a different situation where this board has viewed a similar application and said,
I'm not aware of it. I may have just read the ordinance more carefully than other people. I don't know.
Any other questions from the board? All right. Mr. Steck, you're good?
I'm here for the duration.
Okay. Mr. Silbert, did you want to continue the public and then you can redirect on your witnesses? What's your pleasure?
I think it would make sense to hear from the public. And
Okay. Okay. All right. So anyone else within 200 feet of the project site wish to be heard? Sir, please come up.
Sir, would you raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record, provide your address.
Charles Jamal, 67 Westerville
I'm,
Avenue.
I'm sorry, I did not catch the last name again.
Jamal,
And the address?
67 Westerville.
Sir, would you mind spelling your last name just for the court reporter?
Jammal.
Thank you so much. You may proceed, sir.
Get some stuff. I don't have 12 copies.
You have just, well, when you get back to the microphone, I'll ask you.
6. Yes, ma'am.
Make sure they know that. Let the record reflect that I've been handed a folder of number of documents. Mr. Jamel, do you want each individually marked?
I think the package itself would be fine. I'll go over them with you.
You don't have any copies for the applicant's attorney or for the board?
I do not know. They're just pictures and,
It would obviously be difficult for,
I can't have two conversations
Sorry.
at one time. I'm very talented, but I'm not that talented. Okay. Can we, sir, your time's not going to start. We just want to make sure that Mr. Silbert has an opportunity to review before you go through it.
okay.
Okay? So we'll take 2 minutes.
thank you.
Okay.
He has to have a right.
All right. So, sir, what we're going to do is our board secretary is going to make color copies of that for the board.
No, for the applicant.
I'm sorry, for the applicant's attorney, just so that he has a chance to review. So if possible, while she's doing that, if we can go to another resident within 200 feet, and then we'll just come right back to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else within 200 feet of this property that wants to be heard? Ma'am? Good evening.
Good evening. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record and provide your address.
My name is Linda Valeriani, Valeriani, and my address is 726 Old Post Road. In the pictures that the planner had provided to you, my house is actually the second one from Gray Street. My neighbor who's also with me, she's the first house. If you were sitting in her TV room, you can see directly back through the property to where the sign would be. I know in past presentations, the basis for everything was that we had all this tree coverage. But if you look at the third page, P3, you can see that what you can see in this left-hand picture is what we can see. We are above the lockup. The lockup is down in a ditch, basically, and the sign and the turnpike are completely clear in our visual sight. So I just wanted to make that clear that from my backyard, from my kitchen window, I can see the New Jersey Turnpike, and I would be able to see where this sign would be. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Anyone else within 200 feet of the property want to be heard? Okay, sir, so we're going to go outside 200 feet, just so we can keep the train running down the track, and then we'll go back to you. You still got your place in the counter, you're good. All right. Is there anyone with outside of 200 feet of the property that would like to be heard? Sir in the back?
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name for the record, providing your address.
Jeffrey Wayne Kuzmic. I'm the homeowner of 39 Wayne Street.
Would you mind spelling your last name?
KUS as in Sam, M as in Mary, ICK.
Thank you, sir. You have 6 minutes. You can proceed.
Well, I wanted to supplement the testimony of Mr. Steck regarding the billboard. Oh,
There you
sorry.
go.
Regarding the billboards within, regarding the billboards that are within 2,500 feet of this particular application. So I have some exhibits that I'd like to have marked and identified.
Do you have multiple copies of the exhibits?
I have at least 3, one for myself, one for the board, one for the attorney.
Okay, the board is going to have a moment to, once you've testified to them, I will mark them accordingly in order, and then the board can review them.
All right. May I approach?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the exhibits, the one exhibit is a list of the billboards that were obtained from the DOJ permit list.
Okay, I'm going to
Would-
mark that as O2. You can continue.
So I obtained these from the web on the DOJ's official website, New Jersey Department of Transportation's permitted list. And these are pages 665, 672, and 674. So the first one is listed as application number 5, I believe it's 56315. It's the dealer is Edison Lockup, and it's 128 square foot signage. That is depicted on the photograph that's identified as photo exhibit OPP-1.
Okay, we're gonna label that as Exhibit O3.
For both photographs?
The first is O2, and the second one is O3.
For both photographs?
For the packet of photographs.
Yes, for the
sir.
packet.
So I also prepared an exhibit regarding the locations of these signs in relationship to the tax maps of Edison, specifically tax map number 59. So unfortunately, I don't have a copy of it, but I do have a board that shows the locations of the various billboards that are listed on these on exhibit O-2. And
You don't, and let me just stop you there. Do you have a smaller version at all for the board secretary? to
no, I did
retain?
not.
Okay, we're gonna mark that board as O4, and that will be retained by the board secretary, but we will need to have copies that are in a format that's at least 8.5 by 11 to 8.5 by 14 submitted within 24 hours,
Not a problem. Just have to get them scanned.
because we will need to provide them as well as copies for the applicant's attorney as well as myself.
Okay. So how I prepared this document was I downloaded the tax map number 59 from the Edison website, and I had it printed at what I believe to be full scale. The tax map shows that the scalar dimension is 1 inch equals 100 feet. So there was a discrepancy in the full printing of it, whereby the scalar dimension was about 7/8 of an inch per 100 feet. So I made my adjustments in mapping out exactly the distances approximately from the center point of the monopole for the proposed billboard application. So back over on the corner of Main Street and Woodbridge Avenue is billboard number application 75500, which is indicated on O3, which is the OPP, photo exhibit OPP3. It's a double-sided sign, and it is approximately 25 square feet. That is approximately 1,600 feet from the proposed application. Moving on to the next billboard, which I think Mr. Steck had mentioned, it was 25 square feet. It's actually 128, and its application permit number is 58. I believe it's 58. It is 58315. It's 128 square feet, and it's noted on page 665 of Exhibit 02. The other previous one that is at the corner of Main Street and Woodbridge Avenue is indicated on page 672 on Exhibit 02. The last one, which Mr. Steck had mentioned, is a double-sided sign that's right at the corner of Grace and the access into the Edison lockup. And that is noted on Exhibit 02, page 674. And its number is 75926. This one is the one that's closest related, and it's approximately 500 square feet, 500 feet from the center point of the billboard. The other one that was the larger 128 square foot was approximately 900 square feet, 900 linear feet or radius from the center of the billboard. So there are 3 documented billboards that are listed on the DOT website that are less than the 2,500 square foot or 2,500 foot condition that's cited in the zone regulations that Mr. Steck had testified to.
Do you have anything further, sir?
Well, the other thing is I wanted to cross-examine some of the witnesses that had provided direct testimony in the prior hearings.
Okay, so we had asked at the beginning of the hearing if you had questions to do them in the beginning prior to your commentary, because you're on the clock now.
Well, Mr. Steck had testified.
But
I wanted to
he came as a professional.
I wanted to exercise my due process rights in cross-examining any of the witnesses that were proffered as part of the application. And if you're not going to allow me to do that, I want to at least note that objection on the record.
Who would you like to call?
Well, I wanted to start with the outdoor media representative or the applicant. He testified at the last hearing, correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, if he's talking about Mr. Stauning from American Outdoor Advertising, to my understanding, you formally closed the public portion as to questions.
That is correct.
Yeah, but just so you know, that's, Mr. Silver, we allow the public to comment and then, actually question and then comment.
Right.
What has happened here is he's commented. How much time is on the clock? Just a minute left, okay.
Okay, so we're going to pause your timer and let you question, Mr. Stauning.
Very good.
Mr. Stawning, I normally don't do it this way, but I'm going to anyway because even though it's not been that long, I just had an issue with the court with respect to this. So I'm going to, even though you've already been sworn in, swear you in again. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
And just state your full name for the record.
Timothy Stawning, I am managing member of American Outdoor Advertising.
All right, your name again?
Stawning.
Stawning. You had testified in the January 22nd hearing. Are you the landowner?
I am not.
Okay. Are you a contract purchaser?
What was the question?
Are you a contract purchaser for the proportion of land that you're proposing this billboard application on?
Am I a contract? I'm not sure if I understand the question. A contract purchaser?
Yeah. Are you going to?
I lease land on that property.
Okay, so you're
It's a lessee.
You're a lessee of the property.
Correct.
Is the property being proposed for a subdivision because you're portioning out approximately 800 square feet of the property?
The answer is no.
All right. Are you familiar with the application that was submitted to the board regarding that your attorney submitted? The actual zoning application?
Yes.
All right. Did you append any lease agreement to that application?
If I may, the owner of the property consented to the application. We have owner's consent, so there was no lease attached. We've never attached a lease to any application. The board's never requested that. It's a private contractual matter between my client and the property owner. However, I will say that the property owner has consented to this application, completed the township's required owner's consent form.
I understand. But specifically, I'm raising the point before the board as to whether or not this applicant has standing to make such a.
This applicant does have standing. Can we please move forward?
Well, I still want to object on the record as
Your
to the.
objection is noted.
He
Thank
has
you.
not
It's a legal
submitted the
issue.
appropriate proofs in order to establish
Sir,
standing.
it's a legal issue, and we're going to move forward. Your objection is noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm done with this witness.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you tell us if any other witness you'd like to call?
Yes, I think the planner. And just before I want to ask questions of the planner, I wanted to note.
Microphone, please.
For the board.
Can you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry. This is from the November 22nd testimony. The chairwoman Frederick had asked on page 17 of the transcript between lines 11 and 23. If I could read it into the record.
Sir, the record is going to speak for itself. If you have a question for this witness, now is the time to ask the question.
Before we get to this, I wanted to note this on the record.
You need to just get to your question. The testimony, the board is well aware of testimony. They have either read the transcripts or they have been present. So you need to move on to the questioning.
Well, I just wanted to note that the response to the question by the chairwoman was how many billboards are in the 2,500-foot radius of the application. She asked that of Mr. Lair, the applicant's attorney, and he had stated there's absolutely zero, which is what Mr. Bignell had asked in his report, is to determine the number of billboards that were within 200 or the 2,500 radius.
So we're you're really pushing the boundary here as between commentary and questioning. So you wanted to question the witness. I'm letting you question the witness. If you could just please proceed and question the witness.
Very good. So in your prior testimony on January, I think this is January, you were asked whether or not that.
Sir, if you could speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I'm drifting. Whether or not the Watchfire report was, I think you were asked whether or not is accurate and correct. Is that true?
I don't remember. It's a typical report that I would see, but if the question was posed to me, is the report accurate? I'm not a lighting expert.
All right, that's my point. You had provided testimony in that hearing regarding the accuracy and the correctness of the report, but you're in fact not a lighting expert, correct?
I am reliant upon the sworn testimony of a lighting expert under oath. That's good enough for me.
All right, so the question is whether or not the Watchfire report, which was appended to Mr. Berneker, Dr. Berneker's report, was actually entered into the record. Because from the transcripts I read, your chairman, Kumba, had said, how am I going to cross-examine a report where the applicant didn't proffer the expert to provide that testimony on the record?
So the report was submitted as an exhibit 10 days advance of the hearing, and we brought Dr. Berneker, who attached it as an addendum to his report. Dr. Berneker is here. He attested to the authenticity of the Watchfire report while also submitting his own report. He is here to answer any questions, should you have any, as to his report.
I do, but I also like to note my objection on the record as to not being allowed my due process rights to cross-examine the witness.
You're doing it right now.
Well, no, not
This is
this
your
witness,
chance.
the author of the Watchfire report.
Okay.
So just want to note that on the record. So I'd like to talk to, ask questions of Dr. Berneker.
Dr. Berneker, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I can't. She's swearing you in. Okay. So
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear
I couldn't hear you there.
to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And state your full name for the record. Just pull the microphone closer.
Craig Berneker.
You can proceed. Sir?
Hi, Doctor. You had mentioned, you had stated in your testimony that you were an independent consultant that was hired by Watchfire. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in your report, you appended an excerpt, pages 3 through 6 of the Watchfire report.
I did, yes.
Did you provide any independent analysis that was proffered in that report to corroborate the data, lighting data, and the studies that the Watchfire was?
Repeat that question, please.
You're an independent consultant, so were you hired to independently corroborate the lighting data that was noted in the Watchfire report as to how the light measurements were taken, the calibration of the instruments? Were you present at the time when all of that was done?
Are you talking about my report or their report?
Their report. Did you independently
appendix.
corroborate what's contained in the Watchfire report?
I have, yes.
And how did you do that? Were you witness to the actual testing?
I was, yes.
You were present?
Yes.
Okay. So did you provide any other independent analysis, or you just merely witnessed all of their?
My entire report is an independent analysis. The report that precedes that appendix.
Okay. So regarding the facts that you were relied on in the Watchfire report, if it hasn't been entered into the record, then would you consider your reliance on their findings to be not in the record.
Just a correction, the watch fire report was entered into the record.
So noted.
All right, so moving on to your lighting measurements that were taken at various properties. You had noted at least 4 locations that were all along Westerville and the other properties along Old Post Road.
Correct.
All right, did you take any light measurement readings of the adjacent property on Glendale Warehouse?
Not sure where Glendale Warehouse is. I'll have to refer.
It's the adjoining property to the east of Edison Lockup.
No, I did not.
Okay. If I can use exhibit O dash, I think we marked it O-4.
This is O-4, and when you're done, I'll take that from you.
So there's also a residential apartment complex that's noted, I think is the Edison Estates. That's approximately 600 feet to 700 feet away from the billboard application. Did you take any light measurements and readings along this particular area?
I did not.
Okay. So in your report, you noted that there was ambient light conditions of approximately 1.5. They varied from 1.5 or 0.5 to 1.5.
Foot candles?
Right.
Yes.
Foot candles, correct. So, so my question is you did not take any light measurements reading of the adjoining property, nor of the easterly condominium complex to determine what the ambient light levels were?
I did not. I was asked to explore the residential area where I did do the measurements.
So are you familiar with the Edison zoning regulations regarding light trespass onto adjoining properties?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Okay. So in the Edison ordinance, as my understanding of it is that, just bear with me. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the ordinance.
Sir, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be as patient as possible with you, but we do have other people that do wish to speak as well.
Understood. I had it. It's ordinance number 37-61-.3. It's called light trespass. So it pertains to lighting that's spilling onto adjacent properties that would exceed 0.1 foot candles. So you did not provide any analysis of the adjoining property to determine whether or not.
Actually, I did. If you look at the calculations that I did, they are at certain distances away from the sign, and you'll see that there's no illumination that would be delivered, appreciable illumination beyond 200 feet away from the sign.
Right, but we're talking about the adjacent property on Glendale Warehouse. The light spillage, the light trespass pertains to adjoining properties.
Didn't you just tell me that that was 600 feet away from the sign?
No, well, the condominiums are, but
Yes.
we're talking about the adjacent property.
You're worried about the warehouse.
Yes, the billboard application is going to have lights trespass onto the adjoining property. So you did not provide any determination as to whether or not the billboard would be in compliance regarding the light trespass onto the adjoining Glendale Warehouse property. Is that correct?
You can look at the distances at which illumination would be delivered from the sign, and you can look at the distance that that warehouse is from the property, and you can identify then how much light would actually be delivered.
Okay, so your report noted it was at least 3.3 foot candles.
.3 foot candles where? I'm sorry, let me open this up so that I can see what part of my report you're referencing. Can you tell me what part of my report you're referencing?
Well, that's just it. You didn't submit any proofs as to whether or not the billboard was in compliance with the light trespass ordinance for the adjoining property.
So Dr. Berniger's report was focused on the nearby residential properties. So if there's no questions relating to the report as it relates to the nearby residential properties, I don't think the questioning is proper. I understand what you're saying, but Dr. Berniger's report is his report.
Well, but I disagree. His conclusion was
Wait,
that it
you
was
disagree, but
compliant.
we're getting into commentary here.
Well,
We can keep it on questioning.
understood.
Otherwise, we're going to turn the clock back on.
So is it true that you concluded that the billboard was compliant?
I concluded that the billboard would not be an issue in terms of light trespass for the neighborhood that I was asked to address, nor would the brightness, as you might call it generically, of the sign would be excessive relative to recommendations.
But only to the residential district to the south, not to the adjoining adjacent property that the ordinance, Edison ordinance, light trespass refers to. Adjoining properties, not just residential properties.
Embedded in the report is an analysis of how much light would be delivered at certain distances away, regardless of which neighborhood we're talking about. And the 0.3 foot candle recommendation would not be exceeded beyond 250 feet directly perpendicular to the billboard.
Right. So the adjoining property is perpendicular, and within 200 feet, it would admit 0.3 foot candles, but the light trespass ordinance says you can't exceed 0.1 foot candles. So in fact, your analysis of the adjoining property exceeds the light trespass ordinance. Is that correct?
I would have to look at the distance that the warehouse is away, and it's
Well, it's right next door. I mean, the billboard is about approximately, what, 30 feet from the side or 15 feet from the side setback? So it's within 200 feet. It's the adjoining property.
I hear what you're saying, but I did not analyze that specific situation, and I would not testify without having the opportunity to do that.
I have nothing further. I mean, he testified that.
Okay. Asked and answered. We're good.
Thank you. Do you want to keep this,
Yes,
or you
please,
want me to?
please give it to our board secretary over there. Just
Do you want
hand
me
that
to?
over to our board secretary.
Yes. Do you want me to have it reduced and brought to the board?
We will
tomorrow?
need it reduced within 24 hours, but now that it's been marked, it remains with the board secretary.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jamal.
I was going to call Mr. McDonough. Okay. Yep, assuming that there's no.
I guess I could ask a question before my 6 minutes.
Yes,
start?
please.
Mr.
I have a
Jamal,
question.
Mr. Jamal,
Yes, ma'am.
when you testify to these exhibits, let me know because I will mark them
Okay.
concurrently, okay?
Thank you. I just have a question for the representative of American Outdoor.
Okay, Mr. Stone. Mr. Stoney, I'll remind you that you're still under oath.
Just one question. Have you guys ever been affiliated with Outdoor Media System?
No.
Never.
Nope. No.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have. So, this exact application was put before this board in 2008. And it was denied because there was problems with the application, because I have the Oprah paperwork from 2008, and it was different to what they gave to the board. So I thought it was denied, and then I heard they withdrew it. That's why I wanted to know if they were the same company, because the thing is identical. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. This application was before this board in 2008. And then I've enclosed, for perspective reasons, pictures from my back deck to show the proximity to our home. So those are, there's some daytime and nighttime pictures.
So all of these pictures are from your back deck, so there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will mark them as 05,
Okay.
as a packet.
Okay, and then also one of the pictures, I put a green tape mark on it. And that's where the original rendition from the applicant said the billboard was going to be. If you look at the rendition that they gave you guys to my house, 68, 67, it shows now on their rendition that the billboard is like right outside my front door. And if I was a high school pitcher, I could probably hit it with a baseball. So I think there's some problems, you know, where they said it was going to be versus where it actually is. I also added an article in there from 2008 from NJ.com.
Sir, we cannot consider articles of this nature, so that will be disregarded by the board. They will not be handed out by the board secretary. She has not copied them. The board is not allowed to consider those.
Well, I mean, the board could look them up. It's basically.
Sir, the board, it is inappropriate for the board to do so. We cannot consider those articles, and Mr. Silver, do you need to chime in on this one?
Yeah, we,
Do I stop my clock now?
Yeah.
Okay.
as Ms. Shaw indicated, it's inappropriate to submit an article.
I'm not a professional, okay? You guys are $500 an hour lawyers, or whatever you guys make. I didn't know that. But the thing I gave them, the article, is basically comparing the size of your sign in my backyard to a baseball field scoreboard and video display that's actually totaling 576 square feet. You want to put 672 square feet times 2 in my backyard. That's it. So I guess my article won't be. And then to continue, this application brings no value to Edison. And if anything, it's going to reduce the neighborhood's value. There's ways of, you know, for these people to make money without, with being good neighbors. I mean, people hate cell phone towers, but I'd prefer that over this. And just to realize the effect of these signs, they keep saying it's 600-700 feet of vision. The green turnpike signs are about 120 square feet. There's no LED, well, I'm guessing they're LED bulbs. You can see those signs from a quarter to a half mile away, depending on the weather. And just to go on, I've been living in Bonham over 30-something years. We deal with noise pollution from the turnpike. We accept it. They were there first. We get now air pollution from the Glendale warehouse on occasion, when it, depending on the weather. And this is now going to add light pollution to the neighborhood. And in addition, they keep bringing up these trees. I'm no tree guys, but I know tree guys, and they consider sassafras trees, which are the majority of the trees there, weed trees, because they don't last long. They're like 20, 30 years, they're gone. They're not like oak trees or maple trees. So basically, they're big weeds. They're not trees. And that's really all I have.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out. Anyone else outside 200 feet? Mr. Loeffler?
I got 2 minutes. You want to talk about something else?
After the meeting,
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? And just pull the microphone closer.
I do.
And just state your full name for the record, providing your address.
Sure. Ron Loeffler, 6 Nancy Circle, Edison, New Jersey.
Mr. Loeffler, if you just spell your last name for the court reporter.
Sure. Loe, F as in Frank, F as in Frank, Ler.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
Sure. I have a couple questions before I go on to testimony.
Okay.
We called the engineer. I just want to clarify something that's been asked, but I don't think it's been answered.
Before you start, sir, I'm just going to ask you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. And just state your full name for the record.
In the microphone, just, so, sorry. Let you sit first, there you go.
There you go. Thank you. Joseph Sperone with Dynamic Engineering, civil engineer on the project.
Mr. Lawford, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Sperone, how far from the Glendale warehouse property line will this sign be?
I believe that would be the side setback that you're referring to, so it would be 15 feet.
15 feet. Thank you. Dr. Berniker, please.
And Dr. Berniker, you're still under oath.
Dr. Berniker, knowing that the sign is 15 feet from the neighboring property, will it produce excessive or light trespass onto that property?
It may, but as I said with the previous question, I would really need to measure the. Sorry, I thought I was. I would need to measure the current ambient light levels that are there at the moment from the lighting that's already on the property, and compare that to the light that would be delivered from the sign and the angles at which it would be delivered from the sign onto the property as well.
Okay, but your study shows that it will, anything within 200 feet will produce.
I did
the
not
0.3.
specifically evaluate that particular property.
But the watchfire study that you appended indicates that it will exceed the foot candles, correct?
I couldn't quite hear that. The watchfire report indicates what?
0.3 foot candles up to 200 feet, is that right?
The amount of light
that yes or no, will the
Mr. Lawford,
foot
if you just speak
candles-
into the microphone, apologize for interrupting.
Will the foot candles 15 feet away be in excess of Edison's ordinance?
I honestly don't know that because
Thank you.
I'd have to look at the angles.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawford, you're done with questioning?
Sorry?
You're done with questioning?
I might have one in the middle of this, but probably not.
So we're going to do it in the, I want to get it done in the beginning. If they want to get questioning done in the beginning, and then you'll go to your commentary.
All right. I'll be done with my questions.
Okay.
Okay. So, good evening. I'm going to be providing some testimony tonight that's born from some testimony that's been given by the applicant's professionals, and as well as some questions that the board has had regarding some uncertainties and some inconsistencies. And I'm going to be using these exhibits. I'd like to start by reminding the board of some testimony that was given by Mr. Duarte.
Mr. Lawford, we just go closer to the microphone, please.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
I have a migraine headache and.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I was wondering where the sunglasses were. I thought you were just looking cool.
In September, Mr. Duarte, the engineer, testified that, and I'm going to paraphrase him, it's on the record, but he testified that the Avenue C apartments being about 600 feet away, which is actually less than 600 feet away, that they wouldn't be able to read something so small as a phone number, but they'll be able to make out the Nike swoosh or the McDonald's logo. Also, with the testimony that was given by Mr. Lair regarding the Heller Park billboard, he indicated that the Heller Park was the same size sign and the same values. Okay, so can I hand these out?
Do you have copies for council as well?
Thank you. Thanks.
You just leave it on the desk and we'll distribute.
These will be marked as, I believe we're up to 06. Let me just confirm.
So based on Mr. Lair's testimony, that he wasn't testifying, he was just stating facts, that the Heller Park sign was the same size, same values. I went over to the Heller Park sign and I took some pictures. What was the exhibit marked, I'm sorry?
06.
06, thank you. So L1 shows, can I get a copy back?
Mr. Cerrito, do you have an extra one down there?
Mr. Loeffler, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying which sign you're referring to, because my understanding is that there's four signs. So you're referring to a static sign, a digital sign.
The digital sign that Mr. Lair testified to, that when he spoke to the gentleman in Watchfire, he stated, well, give me one moment, I'll clarify that for you.
I'm just trying to.
Mr. Lair testified, well, I only summarized it and added an additional point about Heller. That was just an observation upon fact. When I spoke with the gentleman who wrote the report, oh, by the way, we did the Heller sign just down the way on the turnpike. Same size sign, same values. I'm not testifying. I'm just telling you a fact that I learned from the person who prepared the report.
I'm just trying to determine which Heller sign. That's my question. Because Mr. Lair said there were 4 Heller signs. I just don't know which
How
one
many
you're
digital signs are there?
I believe there's one digital sign, but
It's the digital sign.
Thank you.
So, page L1 shows the digital sign. It's at 220 page L1 shows the subject property, 740 Old Post Road, and the distance to the Avenue C apartments at 545 feet to the Turnpike North. It shows 750 feet to Manning, 825 to Westervelt, and approximately 1,000 feet or 1,000 feet to the Edison Woods or Edison Glen townhouse associations over there across the turnpike. Okay? Page 2 has 4 pictures that I took. The first picture on the left is at 500 feet. And regarding Mr. Duarte's testimony of you won't be able to read something so small as a phone number, and I'm not going to pick on a phone number this whole time, but you can look at this picture and obviously see a phone number of 732-287-4880. Then I went to 775 feet, took the same picture of the same sign, still see something so small as a phone number. And if you could see something so small as a phone number, you will be able to see the red, the brown, the yellow, the green, the orange colors changing. So Mr. Duarte's testimony versus what's really visible in real life is completely different. Then I went to 1,150 feet, the next picture. Picture's a little blurry, I apologize. It was far. The camera, gets out of focus when it's taking a picture that far, but you can still make out the phone number there. Then I went to 1,221 feet at the Penske dealer across the turnpike and took a picture through the trees, and there's a Rutgers sign in red. Okay? And underneath that, you can see all the distances from the billboard where it's located. One moment, please. So you can easily read the phone numbers. Regarding Manning, the distances of the pictures that I took from the Heller Park you can associate them with the distances from the 740 Old Post Road to Avenue C at 500 feet, Manning at 775, and 1,000 over to Edison Glen across the highway. And there has been no tree elevation report for Manning. There has been no tree elevation report for Avenue C. So there's been just tree elevation for Old Post Road and for Westervelt in Mr. Duarte studies. The exact concerns of some of the board members that some of the board members have had. Dr. Berniker testified in January regarding the same concerns. Dr. Berniker testified, the residence that is probably of greatest concern or residences of greatest concern are those that are closest to Route 95, would be looking essentially along 95 toward the sign. Dr. Berniker doesn't have a great concern or a greater concern. He went straight to the greatest concern. And the last picture at 1,221 feet shows the Red Rutgers logo that will be changing colors every 8 seconds. Red Rutgers logo, yellow, green, every 8 seconds, 1001, 1002, 1008, a new color in your window, a new color in your window. So that was Mr. Berniker's study. I got the distances that I've published here from Edison Tax Maps, Google, and the DEP Geo website. Is that me?
That's you.
One more.
If you could wrap up, please.
Thank you. The last page, L4. Actually, I don't have an L4. I apologize. The last page is L3. Refers to Mr. McDonough's picture. If everybody can refer to picture 4 in Exhibit A4, Mr. McDonough's report. He took a picture of what he claimed was about 1,000 feet away. And using the units of measurements, he was actually 1,200 feet away. And he keeps using a thumb analogy, his thumb analogy, and backing up as he's trying to say, I can block out this billboard. Well, 1,200 feet is not close to 1,000 feet, or it's not approximately 1,000. As a professional, it should be 975 to 1025. That's approximate. An additional 20% is a misrepresentation of what the sign is. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Loeffler. I hope you feel better.
Few questions quickly.
Sure.
What type of camera did you use to take these pictures?
Good question. I used a Canon EOS T7 Rebel.
And is it possible that the images that you took, the photos, could have been zoomed in at all? In other words, you could have been standing 1,000 feet away, 1,200 feet away, whatever the distance, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the picture that you took is an accurate representation of the visual of a person standing at that location.
Good question. I took the pictures at a focal length of 50 millimeters, the equivalent focal length of the human eye. So on a Canon EOS T7, that is a 31.25 zoom because it has a crop filter in it. So did I get it exactly at 31.25? Maybe 32, 33. So I have a margin of error there, but the zoom lens is only labeled 18, 24, 35, and 55. So I went to the 35 and bumped it beyond the 3 to give it less than the 35, and that was what I got. So I might be 1 millimeter off regarding the pictures. Is it possible that Mr. McDonough's picture is off? What kind of camera did he use?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I just was asking you questions as to the exhibit you provided.
Okay.
You done, Mr. Silbert?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Loeffler.
Thank you.
Anyone else outside 200 feet want to be heard? Mr. Fagan?
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And state your full name for the record, providing your address.
Nick Fagan, 42 Edgewood Road in Edison.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your patience tonight in hearing and changing your procedures to honor questions at the beginning of speeches, and then we offer our advocation. We do appreciate that. Thank you. I'll keep my comments brief tonight. My family is committed to the opposition of this application, and we stand up for our township's master plan. We stand up for our governing body and the local laws that they chose to protect our neighborhoods that we love and hold dear. We ask you respect the opposition's wishes, respect the township's ordinances, and stand with us to protect our neighborhoods from excesses of all kinds: excessive light pollution, excessive distraction for drivers, excessive consumerism. I believe our neighborhoods and the quality of life in Edison are worth more than just profit waiting to be harvested. I hope you agree with me. We depend on the Edison Zoning Board to preserve and protect our residential neighborhoods. Thank you for your time, and I ask for your vote to deny this aggressive and egregious application.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bassoff, I know you're next. We're going to take a 5-minute recess just to give the court reporter a chance to take a break from typing away. All right, so it's 9:17. We're back at 9:22. Mr. Bassoff, I have a refreshed board for you. I have a refreshed court reporter.
Well-timed break
Yeah,
and a refreshed resident.
the floor is yours, sir.
Mr.
Okay.
Bassoff, if you would please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record, providing your address.
Joel Bassoff, 17 Beach Lane, Edison. I have some questions for Mr. Sperone.
Actually, I'm gonna preempt you. One, if you can pull the microphone up a little.
Sure.
There you go.
Okay.
One, and two, if you just spell your last name for the court reporter.
B as in boy, A, S, S as in Sam, O, F, F as in Frank. And I have some questions for Mr. Sperone.
Sperone, you're still under oath.
Yes. So my questions pertain to Exhibit A5, which depicts the drone photos surrounding the Edison lockup area with rectangles superimposed. That was done at the request of the board at the previous hearing. So I know you're familiar with the testimony from the previous hearing. One of the board members asked about the location of the billboard in relation to the drone photographs, and Mr. McDonough stated, quote, "The billboard location itself is centered in all of these photographs. There are 2 horizontal grid lines and 2 vertical grid lines right in the middle of the middle box. That's where his camera is pointing," referring to the drone operator. Okay. Now, in A5, you superimposed red rectangles, correct?
Yes.
And can we agree that those red rectangles are not on the center crosshatch?
Not exactly correct.
Right. So which is the incorrect location depicting the location of the billboard? The center crosshatch or the red rectangles, or are they both incorrect?
That's a weird way of asking it, but the correct locations are the red rectangles, and I believe Mr. McDonough, I mean, I can't speak to his testimony, but I'm sure he was saying approximate locations as compared to, that's why the board asked for the red rectangles, so that's why we placed them on the exhibits.
And how did you determine where to place the rectangles?
Basically using our survey data, line of sight, from where the photographs were taken.
Okay, so looking at sheet number 1, the house at 67 Westervelt Avenue.
Correct.
That's to the west of the proposed site of the billboard.
Right.
And the photograph is oriented so that north is to the top, correct?
Correct.
And the rectangle is placed to the left of the house, which would be farther to the west, correct?
I believe so, yes. I'm trying to follow you, so hold on 2 seconds so I can get a map for myself, but yes.
And yet the actual location of the billboard would be to the east of 67 Westervelt.
No.
No.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out your orientation. I mean, you're talking to sheet 1, and looking in the left-hand corner of the exhibit, you'll see a map with the orientation on it.
Yes.
So the house would be to the east, and the sign would be, I mean, roughly to the east, so call it southeast, and then the turnpike is to the, what would be the northeast, so the left of this page, or northwest, I'm sorry, which would be the left of this page. So you're basically looking north. I mean, you're looking almost parallel with the turnpike.
Right, so if you're looking north then, east would be to the right, and east is presumably where the proposed location of the billboard is, yet the rectangle's on the left. I'm just trying to figure out where the inaccuracy is.
I'm still not following you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't understand what you're what you're asking,
I'm asking about the accuracy of your depiction.
right? And I'm saying it's accurate.
Okay, well, we'll differ on that. Now, there's no scale on the photograph, correct?
Correct.
Is that standard engineering practice to provide a depiction or an exhibit without some sort of a scale to get a frame of reference of how big the object is that you're focused on?
Well, again, there wasn't. It's not a map. It's a pictorial exhibit. So we're not talking like a plan or a survey where we're measuring a line. This is a field of view exhibit, so not necessarily anything to scale like you would the distance on an engineering plan.
Right, but the request at the last hearing was to provide a depiction of what the sign would look like if you were looking at it from the various locations in the drone photos.
Correct.
So there should be some sort of a frame of reference as to how big those rectangles would be in relationship to the other objects in the photograph. And you can't tell that from this, can you?
Again, I'm not understanding the question, but the request was to provide what the sign, the approximate limits of the sign would appear from that vantage point as far as the field of view. And you get into, as far as the field of view, as something's closer, it appears larger, and as you're farther away, it appears smaller. So, again, this is the approximate size, the limits of what that billboard would be from if you were standing at the spot looking towards the billboard, and how much of your field of view that billboard would take up.
Okay, but you can't tell that from this because there's no scale, so we don't know how accurate on that basis the rectangle is. The rectangle could be smaller than what it would actually appear like in the fields of view
I
from that
disagree,
location.
because we know the distance from that point based on survey aerial photography. I mean, all sorts of mapping. We know the size of the proposed billboard as per our plan, so we know what the apparent size would be from that vantage point based on that distance.
Okay, and what vantage points did you use?
On the
So, for
ones,
example, for sheet one, what vantage point did you use?
we used it from the end of, I forgot the address here, but Westerville Avenue.
No, my
No,
point is
67 Westerville Avenue.
to determine the size of your rectangle. What basis for comparison did you use, or is it just an arbitrary size for the rectangle to make it look small?
It's not arbitrary, and it was based on similar size signs at similar distances.
Okay, where are those signs?
I don't have that detail.
Are they pictures that you took?
Which pictures?
The signs that you used as a basis for comparison for drawing these rectangles?
No, they're just based on historical data and other projects that we have worked on.
But you can't provide the board with those signs so that anyone could make a direct
It
comparison?
hasn't been requested, but if that data was requested, we could provide it.
Okay. So on the exhibit on the 11 by 17 inch sheet of paper, the width of the rectangle on sheet one is 3/8 of an inch. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you were to blow up the depiction of the house and the rectangle to life size, how big would the rectangle be?
I'm not understanding the question.
In other words, what's the scale? 1 inch on this photo represents how many inches in real life?
I didn't take the photo, so whoever took the photo would have to answer that question.
Okay. But that's not something you would need to know to properly depict the size of the rectangle on the exhibit?
Again, I don't know the exact scale, and the size of the field of view is based on not zooming in on the photograph and if you were standing at that point from that distance, how much of your field of view, so the apparent size of the sign would be.
In other words, the red box wasn't made in consideration of the home or any other thing in the
Correct.
picture. It's made based upon the distance from that
Distance
point.
from that vantage point, and similar to other photographs. And again, I didn't take this photograph, but it was from a drone, and Mr. McDonough actually had testified to it previously as to how that photograph was taken. So without zoom, so as if you were standing there looking in that direction, that's the view that you would see.
Okay. So could you tell from this whether, from the vantage point of that home, if you're looking out your window, are you looking at something that fills several inches of your window or your entire window?
Again, this isn't from that vantage point.
Okay. Is that something that would be important to know in order to properly evaluate
we're
what
talking-
the sign would look like from that location?
Depends, but we're talking a window from 67 Westervelt Avenue, correct? That
Yes.
house that's in this photograph?
Yes.
Which this photograph is taken from their front yard?
Yes.
And so I can't imagine would be much dissimilar than what you're looking at from here, seeing the distance from where this photograph was taken to the window I can't imagine is that far.
Dissimilar from what we're looking at here. What we're looking at here is an 11 by 17 inch sheet of paper. In real life, people are looking at a house that's the size of a house, the window that's the size of a window, and a billboard that will fill how much of that window. That's what we're trying to figure out.
I don't have an answer for that.
Well, if we know the size of an object in the photograph, how many feet or how many inches wide it is, we could come up with a scale for that, couldn't we?
We're not comparing apples to apples. That's why I'm having a really tough time answering the questions. So if you were to do a similar, again, it's based on distance and the size of the sign. So if you're closer, and in this case, the window is a little closer, but we're not talking much, there would be a slightly, the sign itself would appear slightly larger because it's taking up a little more of that field of view. It's a similar situation to if I'm looking at the house in the photograph from this distance, it appears, it's taken up a large portion of my field of view, right? So it looks large. It looks like it's, 20 feet, 2 stories. If you're standing in someone's front yard, what a house looks like.
Right.
If I say go 900 feet away, as far, that's the same distance of this sign is from this location, then that house is going to look minuscule. So it's the same theory. You'd have to apply that to the view out the window. So it's not just taking the scale of the sign and moving it over and going, it's going to take up the whole window.
Of course, you could have something that is maybe 48 feet across when you're right against it, but when you go 900 feet away, it could still look like it's 3 feet across.
Sure.
Mr. Bassoff, I believe this question has been asked and answered several times.
Right. Well, I can just, if we do want to determine a scale so that we can see how big the sign will look like if you're looking at the back, a window from 67 Westervelt Avenue, we actually know the size of the portion of the house that's visible. I have the property record card from the tax assessor's office, and it shows that the...
Mr. Bassoff, just to clarify, you are now giving commentary.
Okay. Well, if we know that the size of the house to the left of the porch is 16 feet, then we can measure that on your exhibit, and now we have a scale.
Is that a question?
So in other words, if 16 feet is depicted on the picture, measures across at, say...
Mr. Bassoff, there's no scale on the photo. The board asked of Mr. Sperone and our team to prepare an exhibit with what we believe the billboard would look superimposed on the drone photos that we provided to them.
Right.
And that's really the answer to your question.
Well, my point is that there actually is a scale, and you can multiply the size of the rectangle by that scale, and it will give you an approximation of how big that rectangle would look. In other words, how big the illuminated digital sign would look to someone who is looking out their window at 67 Westervelt Avenue. So if the portion of the house to the left of the front porch measures
I'm seeing
on
a
your
question
exhibit.
here.
So we started the clock on you, Mr. Bassoff, because you rolled into commentary.
Okay.
And I'm giving you some leeway, but I'm not going to get taken advantage of.
Okay. Do you know the focal length?
No,
of the-
no. Questioning. You're now on your commentary time. So just so you know, you're going into your time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were warning me that I.
No, I already warned you.
Okay. All right. In that case, I do have some questions for Mr. McDonough.
It'll be on your time, but that's
Okay. Well, if I might have to interrupt in the middle of the time, I'll rest. Okay. Thank you.
anyone further from outside 200 feet of the property want to be heard? Last call. Anyone outside 200 feet? All right. I'll close the case and I'll go to Mr. Silbert.
Thank you, Mr. Combo. So I have Joe Sprone sitting next to me. Obviously, you heard some questions from Mr. Speck as well as members of the audience as to how the height was calculated. Can you speak to that a little bit? The proposed height is 100 feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you just speak about how we calculated that based upon the grade, vegetation?
I mean, simply that's the height of the sign from the base. So from the base of the sign to the top of the sign, as proposed, is 100 feet.
And are you at all prepared with the NJDOT permitting process for billboards?
I am.
Okay, so isn't it true that when you're applying for your permit, you can give an approximate height of the billboard? However, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be the final height of the billboard you go before the board with.
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. If I can, I'd like to recall quickly Dr. Berniker.
Without objection.
Thank you. So, Dr. Berniker, we heard a lot of concern from Mr. Speck and members of the audience as it relates to the visual impact of the proposed billboard. And your previous testimony was that, in your opinion, from the residential properties that you observed, that there would be no substantial visual impairment to those residential properties based upon the distance, the angle, and the technology utilized in the billboard.
That's correct.
Dr. Berniker, I have Exhibit 05. This is a picture of one of the objectors' backyards. I don't have the distance from the light that's depicted in the background of the image, but would you say that the specks of light that you see may be comparable to the type of the type of impact that you would expect from a billboard to one of the residential properties that you inspected?
I would imagine these are brighter than what you would see from the billboard.
And how did you conclude that?
Based upon the characteristics of street lighting and other light sources that appear to be in this image.
So when you said in your testimony that you felt as though the existing light conditions would have a far greater appreciable impact than the proposed billboard to the nearby residential neighbors, is that still your position?
Yes.
Mr. Steck brought up some concerns about the technology that would be utilized in the proposed billboard. I know we've been before this board for quite some time, but very quickly, can you just summarize again the type of technology that would be utilized in the billboard as far as whether there's louvers or baffles? I don't know exactly what he stated.
Yes. So these are modules that make up the entire lighted sign, and they are provided by Watchfire. That's the manufacturer of the modules. Their technology uses LEDs which are very small diodes, essentially, about 5 millimeters in diameter, and they are arrayed within the sign. And the watchfire uses a particular technology that has basically louvers in both directions, or baffles in both directions. People use those terms somewhat interchangeably. So that achieves a 30-degree cutoff in the horizontal to either side of the center of the sign, and it achieves a more limited cutoff actually vertically. So there's very little chance of light pollution in this particular case. That is light that would go up to the sky. Also, at nighttime, they are dimmed to 3% of the output of the sign. And all of the measurements that we've been talking about have been with full brightness of the sign. That basically means completely white, no color to it whatsoever, the highest level of light that could be delivered by the sign. So when we're talking about illuminance measurements as you move away from the sign, it's based upon that full intensity of the sign. At nighttime, it's dimmed to 3% of its output during the daytime. The measure of its brightness is very, very low. When I was here before, I measured the luminances of different surfaces in this room, and it's far lower than the darkest areas of this room. We should also recognize that when viewed straight on, that's the most intense or brightest. But as you start to move off to the side in either direction, the brightness diminishes considerably. You can actually demonstrate that for yourself with something like an iPad or a phone. If you're looking at it straight on and then you start to look at it from the side, you'll see how the brightness starts to change dramatically. The intensity of light remains the same, but your perception of the brightness drops off dramatically. Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
That's okay. Dr. Berniker, Mr. Steck testified that this is a flashing sign. In your opinion, is this a flashing sign?
No. If you look up the definition or the typical descriptions of flashing signs, they refer to flashing lights. Flashing lights are basically defined as changing every 60 to 120 times per minute. That's a flashing light. These are static images for a full 8 seconds before they change.
And I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but are you familiar with the NJDOT permitting process for billboards in any way?
I am not, sorry.
Are you aware, maybe perhaps not New Jersey, but are you aware of any state that issues, based upon the studies that are out there as far as highway traffic safety, are you aware of any state that's allowed to issue a permit for what would be considered, based upon the definition you just gave, a flashing sign along an interstate highway?
I'm not aware of any.
Because that would be a safety hazard, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. I believe that's it. Thank you. Thank you. And then last, if Mr. McDonough is ready.
Mr. McDonough, I remind you, you're still under oath. Thank you.
Okay. So just generally speaking, you heard the testimony of Mr. Speck. I think you've had the opportunity to review some, if not all, of the exhibits. There was one that I don't know if you actually had the opportunity to review. So right now I'm referring to, oh, I don't have it marked. I think it was Mr. Loeffler's exhibit. Yeah, Mr. Loeffler's exhibit. Was that do you,
06, I think, is the one.
06? Okay.
Mhm.
This is Mr. Loeffler's exhibit 06. First of all, the images depicted in Mr. Loeffler's exhibit, and I'll give you a second to look at it, appear to be very different from the type of images that you prepared using your drone.
Yes.
I know you're not a professional photographer, but do you have any idea why those images might look so different than the images that you took with your drone? Obviously, you didn't prepare the superimposed billboard on those images, but
I don't know unless there's some sort of warping or zoom factor with the camera.
okay. And you didn't use anything like that in your drone shots?
No, I walked up here without my drone specs, but yes, we used a standard DJI drone, and I believe it's a 16:9 ratio, which is a standard ratio. It's not a wide-angle ratio.
And I know that you didn't prepare the exhibit with the superimposed billboard. I believe that was A5. Obviously, you prepared the drone shots used for it. But in your opinion, does this look accurate based upon what you're seeing, the size of approximately the size of the red rectangle that we're showing, what it would appear from that position?
Yes, again, I stood right next to the drone operator when these shots were taken. We tried to simulate to a reasonable degree of certainty where that object would be. We went above the trees, pointed it at the direction of where the object would be, and then dropped it down. And that's where our periscope, I'll call it, kept its focus.
Okay. Just give me one moment here. So we heard a lot of commentary, testimony as to the township's ordinance. And is your position that based upon the Federal Highway Beautification Act and the New Jersey's Road Sign Control Act, that in your opinion, the township's ordinance is outdated or at least inconsistent with the Federal Highway Beautification Act and New Jersey's Road Sign Control Act?
Well, again, the applicant has procured an outdoor advertising permit here at this location in accordance with its regulations, which are, as I said last time, chock full of safety concerns. So to the extent there's a discrepancy between the two from a separation standpoint or otherwise, again, I think that's been well vetted by the stewards of highway safety as NJDOT.
Okay. We also heard testimony about possible D1 variance relief. In your opinion, is this a flashing sign?
This is not a flashing sign. We wouldn't be here if this was a flashing sign. The actual DOT regulations specify what flashing is, and that is a prohibited sign under the state regulations. So again, we're here because we have a static image that changes on regular intervals. But as we've said before, there is no blinking here. There's no exploding here. There's no animation here. This is a static, changeable image that changes instantaneously in the blink of an eye. There's no fading. There's no rolling. There's no scrolling. And I think I said there's no blinking here.
And you also had the opportunity to review Mr. Bignell's report.
I did. I have great respect for Mr. Bignell, and he's, I'll say, top shelf planner here in the state. And he says that no D1 relief is needed here.
And did you also notice that he, in his report, that he didn't specify the need for D3 variance relief?
Correct.
Okay. Do you agree with that?
I agree, yes.
Okay. So the applicant is seeking D6 height variance relief. As far as D variance relief is concerned, it is your opinion that's the only variance relief needed in connection with this application?
That's correct.
Okay. And you had the opportunity to hear Mr. Steck's testimony. Is there anything that you want to add in addition that I didn't ask you to address any of the statements Mr. Steck made?
I think the only thing I'll say is planning tries to look at things from a practical standpoint. When you stand by those homes and you look down onto this property, if you go there at night, you will see the Topgolf sign right across the highway, which is pointed right at these homes. That's the face of the sign. That is an animated, rolling sign that has animations every time somebody gets a good shot. I've been there myself. That stands out. This is going to be the back of the sign. That is proximate to those. So if the fear or the concern is that you're getting another Topgolf sign, again, this is going to be the back of the sign. This is not going to be the front of the sign. And it's a still image. It is not a moving image. So again, planning tries to look at everything from a practical standpoint. The last thing I'll remind the board, this is the LI industrial zone, which allows a wide variety of non-residential uses, active uses here, including manufacturing, including warehousing, and all the activity and all the movement that goes with it that is allowed right here on this site. This is a pole with 2 panels on it, much less intense than what could be on this property from an illumination standpoint, from a noise standpoint, from a traffic standpoint, and from an activity standpoint.
Just a couple more points or questions I'd like to ask you. So, Mr. Steck raised concerns about impervious coverage. Do you have any concerns with impervious coverage as it relates from a planning perspective with the proposed billboard?
No, again, to the extent that we are dealing with a developed piece of property, a developed industrial piece of property, and we have good top-notch engineers looking at this site.
Similar question. I don't know how many times you've been to the site, obviously a few times, but any concerns as far as parking is concerned? Do you think the proposed billboard will have a negative impact to the parking on site?
No, again, we're talking about one space in the extreme corner of the property developed as a self-storage facility.
And Mr. Speck also spoke about the criteria under Section 2 of the MLUL. He made mention of the fact that there's other notification opportunities for the township and the state on the turnpike. While you had testified, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this could be used for Amber Alerts, real-time traffic updates, emergency response updates, notifications, all things that you had testified to would go to criteria under Section 2. That's correct?
Correct.
Isn't it true that the billboard could also be used by nonprofits, whether it's Edison High School or J.P. Stevens? They could promote, football game or a community gathering event or something that's not necessarily commerce related, but could be for charity reasons, or right there's more than just commerce related activities that would go to the benefit of the general welfare of the community. Would you say that could be used for this billboard?
The purpose of this land use.
Ms. McDonough, if you could bring the microphone closer, please.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this land use is to convey a message, to convey the written word or perhaps a visual image. It's a way we connect. This land use connects us, not just in terms of emergency alerts.
Okay. And speaking to the setbacks, again, I believe you had the opportunity to review the variance relief. The reason why the applicant is requesting certain setbacks relief is because it's the location in which it would be least harmful to the residential properties nearby. Would you agree with that, based upon the location of the sign?
It is the most remote location from the adjacent residential uses, yes.
Okay. I think that's, just give me 1 second here. Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're done? You have no wrap up? You're good?
Okay, I do have I'll keep it as short as possible. Closing statement here.
Needs to read the process.
Yeah, does the public need to recross or anything like that?
I think, Mr. Silber, I think instead of just being rebuttal, I think you did go into additional testimony. So unfortunately, that may very well be.
Is there anyone within 200 feet? Anyone outside of 200 feet? I will close the public portion. Mr. Silbert.
So, thank you everybody for your patience. It's our position that the testimony provided from Mr. McDonough, that we have met the legal standard as it relates to the negative and positive criteria for the relief sought in connection with this application. And we ask that as you deliberate on this application, you take into consideration the Federal Highway Beautification Act and New Jersey's Roadside Sign Control and Outdoor Advertising Act, which uncontrovertibly provide, in part, that in the event of a conflict between the provisions of the Act and the local ordinance, the provisions of the state's Act shall prevail to the extent necessary to permit the state to carry out its stated policies as it relates to billboards. And that's found in NJSA 27:5-26. It's abundantly clear, at least from the applicant's perspective, that a conflict exists between New Jersey's Roadside Sign Control and Outdoor Advertising Act and Edison Township's, what we stated was an outdated ordinance. This board has recognized this fact in a number of other billboard applications. Most notably, what we had spoken about, the board approved the Heller Industrial Digital Billboard, which is 100 feet in height, also has an 8-second flip time. And even just speaking to that site, the board approved 3 other Heller static billboard signs, 2 of which measure over 100 feet in height. So there's a clear history. Going back to the use, it's our position that this use is a permitted use in the zone as it has been treated for other applications, especially digital applications where no other variance relief was sought as it relates to D1 for a flash new sign or anything like that. There's no history of that. So it's our position that but for the height variance relief sought in connection with this application, which, as you've heard from Mr. Sperone, is absolutely essential for the use to be functional for the property, as it's adjacent to a 12-lane interstate highway, we would not be before this board, as all the other variance relief we're seeking are bulk variances. The applicant went through the NJDOT permitting process, which in and of itself is not an easy process. We meet the NJDOT spacing size requirements as well as the location and timing requirements of the NJDOT regulations. And keep in mind that this, again, is the smaller billboard sign allotted by the NJDOT, as the NJDOT permits billboards that are 1,000 square feet per face. Proposed billboard location is 600 to 900 feet away, approximately, from the nearest residential properties. And it's been demonstrated throughout our testimony that this billboard is virtually not visible from those residential properties located closest to the proposed billboard due to natural buffering, the proposed size of the billboard, the sign face angle, which is what Dr. Berniker just testified to, and based upon the distance between those residential homes and the proposed billboard location. Similarly, Dr. Berniker unequivocally concluded that from a lighting perspective, as you just heard, any luminance glare light generated from the proposed billboard and billboard message changing would not cause any substantial detriment to the surrounding residential properties. It would be, again, less than the existing light that already exists there from whether it's traffic, porch lights. Board must take into consideration that this is a permitted use and that it's a use that's necessary to exist in accordance with state and federal policy. Equally as important due to its public messaging capabilities and also the fact that it can support nonprofits, not just for-profit companies, that it is beneficial use not only for the township of Edison, but to the state at large. As it relates to the flip time, the safety issues have been exhaustively studied and consistently found to be safe. There hasn't been any testimony put forth by the objectors that digital billboards with an 8-second flip time are for some reason unsafe. And again, it is in fact standard in the industry. While it's true that a board in granting a variance may impose reasonable conditions to safeguard the public interest, the conditions must be proportional to the use, and they must be reasonably calculated to achieve some legitimate objective to the zoning ordinance. Moreover, the conditions must not be unnecessarily burdensome to the landowner. The fact that this board may have imposed a 5-minute flip on previous billboard applications along Route 1 has no bearing on this application. And we have the lighting testimony from an expert in the field to support that. So I'll conclude with this statement. So from our side, we merely ask that you holistically view this application when conducting your deliberations in light of the federal and state guidelines. Consider the fact that the township's ordinance, at least from our position, is outdated, and that you carefully and logically take into consideration the exhibits and expert testimony that was put before you over the course of the last 3 hearings and this hearing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silbert. Does the board have any discussion? Any motions?
Chairman,
Vice Chairman O'Gorman.
I'd like to make a motion to deny this application. This applicant is seeking to approval for a 100-foot-high, 2-sided digital billboard with a maximum area of 672 square feet each side. The applicant has not met all the negative and positive criteria to grant variances requested for the zone, including faces, height, sign, area, and setback requirements. The applicant proposes a 672 square feet each side high digital advertising sign with conflicting heights of 81 feet, 95 feet, 100 feet, which operates 24 hours a day with an 8-second flip time. Based on the testimony and exhibits, there are 3 existing billboards within 2,500 feet. The lighting report does not include Edison Glen condominiums and Avenue C. For all these reasons, Chairman, I make a motion to not deny this application.
Is a motion made? Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Seconded by Mr. Brown. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Yes on the motion?
Mr. Patel,
Yes on the motion.
Ms. Hernandez Prince,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Cerrito,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Sadaha,
Yes on the motion.
Vice Chair O'Gorman,
Yes on the motion.
and Chairman Kumba.
I just want to make a statement. During the proceedings, the board had made several requests for conditions from the applicant. We asked for the sign faces be changed to static. That was a no. We asked for a reduction in height. That was a no. We asked for a change to single face. That was a no. We asked for a turning off the digital component at night. That was a no. There was several references to the Heller billboard, which the zoning board approved. But that was, I believe it was about 6 years ago. I was a first alternate. I was the only one on this dais right now. I was the only one that's still sitting here. And I didn't vote on it. But to say that this board and use that as a precedent, I think is really a nonsensical argument, that the composition of the board has changed since then. And then finally, I have heard that the council is developing an ordinance with regard to billboards within the township, and that's something that I commend. I think it's needed so as to set some parameters for the town beyond this board. And with that, I vote yes on the motion to deny.
Thank you.
All right. So as the next case sets up, I was remiss and I did not announce case 4 on the agenda, case Z20 2022 Chevet Developers LLC at 90 Municipal Boulevard. It has been carried until April 25th, 2023, with no notice required.
That was good.
Going? Jimmy, I like it cleaned up look. You know what I mean? You look younger, the cleaned up look. You know what I mean? Are you leaving? No. Oh.
Can we get that out of the way?
Are you staying for the second case? No. Okay. All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break just to allow the court reporters to switch over.
Ready to go.
Okay,
I'll
all right.
do this.
So, all right, we're back in session. All right, Rachel, if you can call the next case, please.
Z 28-2022, Quick Check Corporation, 425 to 431 Plainfield Ave, Edison, New Jersey, 08817. Section 37-20, applicant is seeking bulk and use variances along with preliminary and final site plan approval to demolish the existing structures and replace with a fuel station with a convenience store. This is not a permitted use in this zone. Minimum lot size required is 5 acres, proposed is 2 acres. Minimum front yard setback required is 100 feet, proposed is 57.01 feet. Rear yard required for an accessory building is 50 feet, proposed is 25 feet. Affected property is located in the PB zone designated as block number 4.A, lots 24 and 25 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Good evening, council.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for staying around.
Thank you for
Henry
your
Kent
patience.
Smith, Fox Rothschild, on behalf of the applicant, Quick Check. We were previously before the board at 2 prior hearings, one in October, the other in December. At the December meeting, my partner, Mr. Chang, presented the application. He completed the direct testimony of our traffic engineer, our architect, and our professional planner. The board at the end of the meeting had a question and concerns related to the lighting intensity and asked for us to undertake an investigation and propose a new lighting plan, particularly for the gas service area, which we have done. The applicant has resubmitted its revised plans to this board on February the 2nd. I would like to have Mr. Kunzman, who is continued under oath, to testify relative to the amendment to the lighting plan.
Mr. Kunzman, I understand that, Mr. Kent Smith. However, I ran into a problem in court not too long ago on this very issue, so I am going to swear him in again.
Oh, sure.
If you would please raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And just state your full name for the record.
It's Matthew Kunzman with Bowler Engineering.
And if you could just provide your qualifications.
Sure. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer. My license is in good standing in the state of New Jersey. I'm employed at Bowler Engineering as a project manager. I have my Bachelor's of Science from Syracuse University in civil engineering. I've been accepted as an expert witness.
Great, we'll accept your test. We'll accept your credentials.
So that was the chairman, Mr. Comba. Chairman, Mr. Comba, C-O-M-B-A. I just, Mr. Kunzman, did you prepare revised plans that you have resubmitted to the board?
Yes, I did.
And did those plans include a revised lighting plan?
Yes.
Could you please describe first the analysis that you undertook to determine what was an appropriate lighting level relative to other uses? And then second, the lighting level that we're proposing for this particular site?
Yes, so at the conclusion of the last board meeting, we were asked by the professionals and by the board members to perform a light study of surrounding gas stations within Edison and also of other quick check facilities in neighboring towns. And what we found when we did light studies at night time, we found that the average foot candle values in those facilities is approximately 38 foot candles, and with the max average of 47 foot candles for the surrounding gas stations. So with that information, we revised our lighting plan to reduce the lighting levels underneath the gas canopy from what was previously submitted of a maximum of 39.6 foot candles to 19.7 foot candles. So we reduced the lighting variance request by approximately 50%. Also, we revised the max average underneath the gas canopy. So the average lighting levels under the gas canopy is 16.03 foot candles as well.
And then overall, the analysis of your lighting plan relative to the entire site? Is it?
Yes, so the requirements in the code requires that the foot candle average in the parking area, the maximum is 2.5 foot candles. we do comply now for the parking areas on site. So we also revise that as well to reduce the lighting levels.
And in your opinion, is the proposed lighting appropriate for this particular use in this location?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, then, to the extent that we have reduced the variance request, we submit that we are now submitting, per the most recent plan, a reduced variance request to the levels as Mr. Kunzman has testified to.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, we also have received 2 reports based on the resubmission that we have made.
So let me, before we jump to that, let me see, does the board have any questions for Mr. Kunzman on his testimony on lighting levels? Mr. Bignell?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman. The parking in the drive areas, your plan shows it at 2.89, not 2.5. Am I mistaken, or?
Sorry. Yeah. The paved parking areas has an average of 2.5 foot candles on our revised plan. The prior site plan had 2.89 foot candles, so we revised it.
And what's the date of that plan?
This one's dated February 1st, 2023.
Yeah, I went back and looked at it. I thought I saw 2.89. So in your notes, what do you have up in your notes? On your letter, in your
the
letter
average has 2.5 foot candles in the paved area.
Okay, then in your letter, your most recent engineering letter still calls it out as 2.89. I got it from somewhere of that plan, so I either got it from the report that you wrote when you submitted the revised plan, or the plan itself. So you're saying it's 2.5.
It's 2.5.
Okay, that complies with the ordinance. I just want to make sure we're all consistent between the engineer's report and the site plan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Bignell. Mr. Carley? Drop that microphone.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the lighting plan, which has been revised to February 1, does indicate an average foot candle spread of 2.5. But as Mr. Bignell indicates, the transmittal letter dated February 3rd caused the question. And so that's been resolved. So it's going to be 2.5.
Yes.
Okay, and that's consistent with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anybody from the board have any? All right.
So then, Mr. Chairman, the last issue is that we did receive reports from Mr. Bignell's office on February 17th and from Mr. Carley's office on February the 20th. Mr. Kunzman, you've looked at Mr. Carley's report?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any issues with regard to complying with all the recommendations in that report?
I do not have any issues. Besides the...
No, so
That's
for Mr. Carley's report, you agree?
Yes.
And then, Mr. Chairman...
Mr. Carley?
Yes, we received materials subsequent to Bowler's submittal on dated February 3rd. They transmitted them to Ms. Augustine, and we received them subsequent to that. We updated our report. We have a 4th review dated Monday, February 20. And I think what that demonstrates to the board is that Mr. Kunzman's shop, Bowler, has made progress on addressing the concerns, the site plan concerns expressed by our previous 3 reviews. Am I speaking gibberish, Mr. Kunzman?
No, I'm just pulling up my review letter that you have. Sorry, go ahead.
And that is that.
So you agree to comply then with the final recommendations from Mr. Carley in his report of February 20th, correct, Mr. Kunzman?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And it also shows that Mr. Carley is a hard worker because he was working on a federal holiday.
Russ never sleeps.
And then with regard then to Mr. Bignell's report of the 17th of February, do you have a chance to review that?
Yes, I have.
And with regard to that report, there was one issue that was raised relative to the lighting levels. You have addressed that in your testimony?
Yes, I have.
And then the only recommendation that we, again, continue to request that the board consider is the automated trash enclosure self-closing gate. That is Mr. Bignell's recommendation, J as in John. our testimony had been that those gates are very difficult to maintain. When they break, they are a real problem. The orientation of the enclosure is such that we don't believe the mechanical gates really are appropriate in this location. So we would continue to request the board's indulgence to permit the non-mechanical hand closing gates.
Mr. Bruno?
Mr. Chairman, I've driven on this town many occasions, and all the dumpsters locations or the screen enclosure locations that have man gates are always left open, and that defeats the purpose of having screening. The reason why I asked them to be self-closing is because then it provides the screening, and some employee doesn't have to go out there and open and close it because they get tired of going out there and opening and closing it, and that's the direct visual environment that we're trying to avoid. So I disagree. I mean, the board will have to make a decision on that one. And as far as my report, I'd like to ask the applicant just a couple of things. They've agreed to my report, but I want to put things on the record so we have it. So there'll be no high volume diesel pumping on this site, so it'll just be like low.
Correct. It'll be
I
low
know
flow
you put a
diesel.
note, but I want you to say it on the record.
Yes, low flow diesel will only be proposed on the site.
So we won't be filling tractor trailers with a high volume. So
That's correct.
no, preclude them from showing up on the site. Okay, that's one. The outside display of propane tanks, outdoor coolers, vending, that's all going to be eliminated. There's no outside store. I know you put it on as a plan note, but I'd like you to, again, say it on the record.
Yes.
Okay. We talked about the trash enclosure. I'm still concerned about that. And then the natural disaster, the generators that get so you can pump gas during an emergency. Sure. You have like an on and off switch. How do you're not going to provide the generator, but you're going to provide the ability to bring a portable generator in and turn it on and turn it off when you need to?
That's correct. There will be a transfer switch on the building that will allow a generator to be delivered.
Do you have like a contract with those people that they normally, when during the time of emergency,
Yes.
they know to show up with your generator, or it's
Yes.
just
There's
it's just
a
going to be that
contract
switch with no generator because we can't get access to a generator?
Yes, there is a contractor with Quick Check that provides generators to all their facilities or most of their facilities at a time of need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
If I could, then just to Mr. Bignell's point, just describe again the orientation of the enclosure and the location of the gates and where you would view the gates in the enclosure on site.
Sure. So the trash enclosure is located to the southeast portion of the parking area.
Point to it, please.
It's located in the southeast portion of the property, located in the rear of the or behind the food store. It'd be pointing towards the loading zone and not towards the right of way of Plainfield Ave.
So with regard then to any of the visual corridor from either Kilmer or a Plainfield, then what's the public going to see?
There would be parking stalls in front of the trash enclosure, and they would see the side of the.
So there wouldn't be any direct visual corridor into the enclosure unless you were at the rear of the property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's just, Mr. Chairman, what our request was based on, is that given the orientation of the enclosure, we think that the mechanical gates would be problematic. However, depending on how this board feels about that, we'll consider the mechanical if we have to. But we really think the visual corridor is one that's so limited, it's not worth the maintenance of nightmare of a mechanical gate.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman?
What happens is that the dumpster gets.
if this application gets approved, I would make a condition of approval that the trash enclosure should have an automatic self-closing gate, as requested by Mr. Bignell.
We would agree to that condition.
O'Gorman. Dan O'Gorman. Okay.
O'Gorman, please. Thank you.
All right, anyone?
Mr. Ken Smith, just to clarify the record, and I apologize because I have a stack of your documents that are pretty extensive. Do you need to amend the variance application, or none of the variances are changed with this new revision?
We reduced the lighting variance request from 39-foot candles to 19, what, Matt? What was it?
19.7.
Yeah, so that was a reduction in the variance request from 39 to
So
19.7.
the only thing I would ask is that you do submit an amended application
Will
just
do.
so that our records are clear.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, again, in the letter from the engineer dated February 3rd, 2023, number 5, on page 2, it says, refer to revised site plan C301. An additional variance is requested for the driveway width exceeding the minimum due to the requested request in the county to align the lanes. So are you still seeking a variance there? Because that's an additional variance that would have to be provided.
Mr.
I believe-
Kunzman,
Okay.
please.
I believe I provided testimony to that on the last, or the first hearing.
So that we are continuing that request, and Ms. Shaw, I will address that in the resubmission.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then the fees as well, if you would.
Excuse me?
We charge per variance on our new ordinance, so you have
Right.
to pay the fees.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I have concluded my initial direct presentation. I would like to reserve rebuttal based on questions or testimony from any of our neighbors.
Okay, and so given the time of night, Mr. Ken Smith, I'm going to suggest that we carry for another evening. I know that the amount of public that was here prior has kind of died off. I want to thank the public that is here that for sitting through this. You learned more about billboards than I think you wanted to tonight, but thank you for indulging us. Madam Secretary, do we have another date for discontinuation?
March 28th.
Council?
March 28th, and if you would announce that, Mr. Chairman, so we would carry the notice.
Yes, sir. All right, so for anyone here, for anyone listening, this case will continue on March 28th, 2023. If you are within 200 feet and you received a notice, you will not receive a new notice. This is your notice, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Richard, do you have anything else for the evening? All right. What we got? We can sit here and look at each other all night. What are we doing?
Motion to close the meeting?
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion's adjourned. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.